Isn't it crazy that we can't talk about this stuff before the meeting? Credit. As if that's supposed to.
All right, guys.
You want a tissue? I have a tissue.
Go ahead. I'd like to call to order a utility special district meeting. The date is July 17th and the time is 5:41 p.m. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Chairperson Douglas Lawson.
Here.
Vice Chair Shirley Lanier.
Here.
Board Member Chadwick McCoy. Board Member Kashaba Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Board
Here.
Member Glenn Spiritus. Ex officio Board Member Mayor Ronnie Felder. City Manager Jonathan Evans. Executive Director Michael Lowe.
Present.
Acting District Clerk Deborah Hall McCullen is present. City Attorney Don Wynn.
Here by phone.
Attorney Tanya Early.
Present.
District Finance Director Randy Sherman. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum. You may proceed.
Thank you. If we can have a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Board Member Miller Anderson. Do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions to the agenda?
None from staff, Mr. Chair.
Disclosures from the board? Motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Board Member Kashaba Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Spiritus. Vice Chair Lanier. Chair Lawson.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Thank you. No items on consent. We're going to go straight into awards and presentations. Madam Clerk, 4A.
Election of a chairperson and vice chairperson for the Utility Special District Board of Directors in accordance with Section 3.03 of the City of Riviera Beach Utility Special Districts Charter. Mr. Chair, the floor is now open for nominations for chairperson for the Utility Special District.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Board, the floor is open for nominations.
I nominate Doug Lawson to be the chair.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded. Do we have any other nominations? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chair, since there are no more nominations, that means you will be the Utility Special District Chair for year 2024, 2025.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Mr. Evans?
if I would recommend that the board ratify it by the form of a vote to memorialize that in the record, it would be staff's recommendation to proceed forward in that fashion.
Thank you. Roll call, Madam Clerk?
Board Member Miller Anderson. Board Member Spiritus.
Yes.
Vice Board Member Lanier.
No.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That passes with Board Member Lanier dissenting.
Thank you. Madam Clerk? Nominations for Vice Chair?
The floor is now open for nominations for Vice Chair of the Utility Special District.
We have a nomination?
Nominate Shirley Lanier.
Mr. Chair, I nominate Tradwick McCoy.
Any additional nominations?
So we will vote on Board Member Lanier, Board Member Spiritus,
No.
Board Member Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Lanier,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That with Mr. Spiritus, Board Member Spiritus dissenting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Moving on to item 7A.
Item 7A, Resolution 10-24 UD, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the City of Riviera Beach Utility Special District, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving the proposal from Global Tech to perform engineering, design, and construction services for the raw water wells and transmission system as needed to upgrade the systems to meet the requirements necessary for the new water treatment facility, piggybacking a Palm Beach County contract awarded to Global Tech and authorizing the Utility Special District Finance Director to make payments from project number 23039 in an amount not to exceed $4,833,045.74 and providing an effective date. Mr. Chair, we do not have any comment cards for this item. The acceptance of comment cards for this item is now closed.
Motion to approve Resolution 10-24 UD.
Do we have a second? Resolution dies for lack of a second.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Spiritus, go ahead.
I might approve this. I just need an opinion from council.
Okay. Do you want to second the motion?
I would second it subject to opinion from council.
Okay. Motion been made and seconded. Before we go into the presentation, Dr. Spiritus, did you want to ask your question?
Yes. Council, can you please tell me whether or not you have reviewed the requirements for piggybacking this proposal on with the other municipality?
Dr. Spiritus, this is Dawn Wynn.
Oh, hi, Dawn.
I have not. That is a function of procurement, not a function of legal. If procurement says that the piggybacking is sufficient, legal signs off on it.
Hey, Mr. Chair,
Dr. Spiritus, go ahead.
I would like to withdraw my second, and I would make a new motion if that's okay.
Second has been withdrawn. Do we have another second for the Councilwoman Miller Anderson or Board Member Miller Anderson? Resolution dies for lack of a second. Board Member Spiritus?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 10-24 UD, subject to council researching and approving the authority that we have to piggyback with Palm Beach County as per procurement requirements under the state.
Second. So there's been a motion that's been made and seconded. The discussion from the board. Ms. Miller Anderson, board member, did a question?
Didn't he say he made a motion to approve this resolution, but then also to have a discussion about the,
Contingent on council.
Subject to.
Yeah, subject to our attorney. And that was my question, actual follow-up. Attorney Nguyen, you said you have not reviewed the procurement piggybacking?
That is the function of procurement. And so, Dr. Spiritus, with all due respect, your motion, basically what you're doing is moving the procurement function over to legal.
That's correct.
And there is, there's a division between procurement and legal for a reason. If the council directs me to do it, then of course I will. But we do try to keep those lines separate.
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Spears, go ahead.
Or rather than hiring outside counsel to do this, I would respectfully request that the city attorney do this review and give us an opinion.
Please let the record reflect Board Member Trogic. Please let the record reflect Board Member Trogic McCoy and Mayor ex officiano Mayor Ronnie Felder's on the board. Go ahead, Attorney Nguyen.
If the motion passes and that is the direction of the board, then that's what I will do.
Okay. Discussion by the board?
is this something that he would like to have research done on it? Is this something that you might want to postpone instead of voting on it?
What
I'm
I'm
not
saying
following.
is, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
what I'm suggesting is that we approve the motion subject to council telling us that what we're approving is legal to approve
But
because of the procurement requirements of piggybacking.
Chair,
Go ahead.
to me, I don't know. It doesn't sound like she's going to approve, do it tonight. So, I mean, I could only be on board with this, and it makes sense to say we're going to postpone it and give them an opportunity to go and do that and come back. But I mean, I don't know.
That would be that would be my recommendation. I think it's just cleaner.
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
do the research, bring it back, let you know. I don't know, Mr. Lowe, if this is something that is imminent, that you need right away, or if you can bring it back at the next utility district board meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, obviously I'm not the overall procurement expert. I do know that procurement did contact Palm Beach County and ask permission to piggyback it. With regards to the immediate needs, we have basically a third of our wells down. We are buying water because we can't pump sufficient water. This work it's costing us money not to bring more wells online, but obviously we need to follow the legal parameters in doing so.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Dr. Spears.
Is it possible to call a meeting of the utility board next week prior to the city council meeting so that we can adopt this resolution, since it appears to be very important to the water in our city?
Question for that. Will that give legal sufficient time to review?
Your next meeting isn't until the first Wednesday in August.
I thought it's the 24th.
I
That's the
believe
CRA
he was-
meeting. It's the
I
CRA
believe Dr. Spears was referencing the CRA meeting.
CRA meeting, I'm sorry.
Oh, so you would call a special meeting of the utility special district to be held before the CRA meeting?
Correct.
Yeah.
Ms. Miller Anderson, go
I
ahead.
think that day we're starting at 5 o'clock anyway, right? Because or has that changed?
No, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
That meeting is going to start at 6. We're going to provide some additional information that you'll see in your posting of your CRA agenda that'll provide some clarity. And then Attorney Chris Smith will also be reaching out to you as well to provide some clarity. So we're going to start at the same time that we normally start our CRA meeting next week.
So then if we can have the USD at 5:30? 5 o'clock.
Okay with that?
Good with me, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Board Member McCoy, go ahead.
so I apologize for being tardy. What's the legal question that's being asked? Because I do have a couple questions as well.
Dr. Spiritus?
What I'm questioning is whether or not we have the legal authority to piggyback this proposal. Has it been checked out legally? Have we met all the dates and all the requirements to piggyback onto another municipality?
Mr. Chair, follow up.
Go ahead.
So I'm not sure who the question is for, perhaps Ms. Nguyen, but wouldn't that have already been done? I mean, as part of their cursory review prior to placing this on the agenda, Ms. Nguyen, or?
Mr. McCoy,
Go ahead, Attorney Nguyen.
before you arrived, I was explaining that.
Attorney
that
Nguyen,
was
I'm
a
sorry,
function-
but your microphone's a little bit low. If you could speak into it a little louder for us.
Yes, I'm sorry. Is that better?
A little bit better.
I was explaining that whether or not to piggyback is a function of procurement. It's not a function of legal. However, Dr. Spiritus has stated that he would feel more comfortable if legal opined on the ability to piggyback. And if that is the direction of the board, then that is what I will do.
Follow up.
Go ahead.
So thank you for explaining that, Ms. Nguyen, Mr. Councilperson Spiritus as well. Actually, I wanted to pull this item, and it was kind of almost related to the same concern. And maybe you may not have the answer, Ms. Nguyen, but particularly when you look at the agreement that's in the backup for Palm Beach County, I located specifically in the executed contract with Palm Beach County and Global Tech that they call out a 25% SBE. And that's certainly different than our procurement where we require a 15% per our procurement code. So if we're seemingly piggybacking, would that, provided that we accept this, are we obligated to accept, seemingly we would be obligated to accept the same terms. Would that be correct, Ms. Nguyen?
That's correct. A piggyback, you accept the same terms and conditions. If you can't accept the same terms and conditions, then you don't piggyback.
Okay. That's important to know. So is that true for the agreement and the attached schedules? Because
The schedules may be different because you have different needs.
Well,
You understand what I'm saying? The county would have entered into their agreement before we are, right? And so the schedules and the dates are definitely different, but all the other terms and conditions have to be complied with.
follow up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Nguyen, I'm speaking of the schedule that calls out the individual SBEs by name. Are we obligated with those SBEs, or are we particularly, or I guess does Global Tech,
Just the percentage. I'm sorry, just the percentage.
the percentage called out in the agreement, you mean?
Yes. I think you said 25%. Yeah.
It was either 25 or 24.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly. So if that's true, does this now create, well, number one, I guess this is a Mr. Lowe question. In looking at this contract, this was a pretty extensive agreement for design build. And I was concerned that the county's needs are much larger than the city of Riviera Beach Utility District's needs. So do we have an apples with apples situation here? Because certainly if you look at, aside from that SBE percentage, but the overall cost, I didn't understand how you arrived at your cost. Is that solely based on the proposal of Global Tech? Or is that some kind of way derived out of the allocation that's set forth in this agreement?
With respect to how the costs are, there is somebody from Global Tech here who could answer that. But with regards to the SBE requirement, I have, from our viewpoint, we checked with Global Tech, and they were prepared to follow the requirements of the county contract, since that's what we're piggybacking.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, if I
Go
can
ahead.
follow up.
Please.
So that speaks to the SBE, but as far as the pricing, like I'm trying to figure out, looking at our resolution, I believe it was $4.8 million.
Mhm.
How
Yes,
is
sir.
that derived? Did that come from the piggyback agreement, or is that based on our needs?
It's based upon our needs within the terms of the agreement with the county. So they have to go through and work with the various people that they're going to work with and put together the scope of the work, which was put together, and from that you come up with a price.
So that's exactly my point. So if they're going to come up with the scope of work, surely our scope of work wouldn't exactly mirror what the county's doing. So,
The purpose, as I understand it, the purpose of the county contract is to allow multiple different projects to be handled under that contract. It's not for a single occasion. It's for the purpose of multiple different types of work within the scope.
okay, but seemingly we have to accept the entire agreement. We can't cherry pick portions
Right.
out of this agreement.
Yeah, it's a piggyback. We must follow the terms of the agreement.
And this agreement is current until when? Do you know?
I don't have my computer with me. But I believe this is the relatively new one. I know that one of the senior officers of Global Tech is present. So if you'd like, he may not have that detail to hand.
And, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
so in the resolution, or perhaps in the memo, this says this supports the construction and design of the new utility facility that we're anticipating.
Right.
Is this cost not carved out already, a part of
Oh.
that project?
No, because the scope of the work of that project, as it was put out, did not include this work. It did include putting in new wells and putting 2 superficial wells in. It did not identify any work to be done on the existing well field. What has happened as a result of the pilot work we've been doing, among other things, is that we have identified that the condition of our well field, which is also supported by other reports that were done prior to the pilot work, is showing that although the water coming in is able to be treated satisfactorily by the existing process, it would in fact cause difficulties with the membrane technology. The result of that is that, as a precaution, in case we can't get our well fields to perform to the standard we expect it should be able to, as a precaution, they are actually looking at putting in pre-treatment in order to pre-treat the water from the well field. Now, if this work and the intent of it is A, to give us functioning wells, and B, to improve the quality of the water, we're getting a lot of air into the system, which is causing precipitates, which are then fouling the membranes in the test plant. They're actually running additional tests now on the pilot plant to see what pre-treatment processes could be used in order to solve the problem.
Mr. Chair?
Hold on. Go ahead, Board Member McCoy.
Yes, so seemingly, 2 more things and I'm done. Number one, I don't see where this was called out in our initial budget that we did summer last year. Can you speak to that? And
There was some money put in the budget, but not to this extent, is the answer.
okay, well, we need to talk about that. You can't just, where are we taking this money from? There has to be a discussion about this.
I have talked and checked with the finance department. What you will find is that because of difficulties in getting permitting and the like, there's a number of other projects.
Director Lowe, give me one moment. If we can keep the speaking in the back down, please. Excuse me, residents, if we can keep it down in the back, it's traveling to the front and we cannot hear the director speak. Thank you. Director Lowe, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The answer is that we have called out in the budget were a number of other projects that we haven't yet been able to start, and we therefore haven't appropriated the funds. Therefore, there is sufficient money available within our overall capital improvement budget as we speak.
Okay,
We
so,
will, as part of, if I'm sorry, if I may, sir, just to say, we are going to, as part of the budget process, reassess the entire capital 5-year plan and represent it to you.
so wouldn't it be appropriate that we be doing amendment to our budget and the various projects that we called out in our capital improvement plan for utility district if we're going to now seemingly authorize a $4.8 million expenditure, which was not originally contemplated for, 10 months ago?
Mr. In my experience, I haven't had to do that when I've been handling things elsewhere, but if that's the wish of the board, then we would go through that process. Yes.
Well, I'm not speaking of the wish of the board, but procedurally, right? If this wasn't called out that we were going to spend $4.8 million on wells and also doing transmissions lines in the capital improvement plan, seemingly the plan is going to have to be modified, and that means something is either going to have to be pushed further back, or we're going to have to find dollars to contribute to the capital plan to keep all of the existing projects that's in there funded. I mean, this isn't a question of the desire of the board. Procedurally, how do you fund capital improvements that weren't anticipated when we created our budget without doing a budget amendment?
Procedurally, that's not something I've had to handle in the past. We have been allowed to move forward in this manner, but I haven't been here at Riviera Beach. And if Riviera Beach's process is to change that, and then that's what we will have to do. Obviously, we will accept the consequences of continuing to delay the work.
Right. Well, what we've seen in the past, when it comes to CIP, there usually is a project number that's associated with it. And I didn't see anything in the backup or the sort that references a project number that the board approved back in September of 2023 relative to our capital improvement plan for the utility district that spoke to specifically this project of doing 4.8 million in well rehabilitation and transmission lines. So, it's a question of process. And I see Mr. Sherman coming, so I want to hear a response, and then I got one last question.
Thank you. Mr. Sherman?
Yes, good evening, Randy Sherman, District Finance Director. Okay, so the project that we're charging this to, 23039, is the water treatment plant. The reason you're doing the wells, this is part of the whole plant process that we're working on. So there is an appropriation for the plant, okay? But again, there isn't necessarily the money because we haven't obviously gone out and done any of the borrowing at this time. So to Mr. Lowe's point, cash is fungible. So, we have cash from other projects that we're not using. So it's not that the district needs cash. District doesn't need the appropriation because you already have the appropriation. And he's charging this to the plant. So this is no different than, what he's doing with Haskell or anything else as far as, the plant process. And Councilman McCoy, I understand your issue. And if you would just soon have this be a separate project, then you're right. We would have to come in and modify the CIP and make it a separate project. But everything that we have so far attributable to the plant, we've been charging to this 23039 project.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question. I just want to follow up. So, well, if that's true, I think the memo needs to reflect that this will be attributable to the water treatment plant as opposed to funded through the existing CIP, because the water treatment plant is separate in the CIP, correct?
It is, and I understand the resolution says Project 23039. It doesn't put the title in. If you want to put the title into the header, and put it in the resolution to make that clear. But yeah, it's that same project.
Thank you. Last question for Mr. Lowe. Mr. Lowe, in looking at the depth of the county's need, why wouldn't it be appropriate for us to go out with our own solicitation? And I'm saying that because if we have to accept the county's terms as presented and we're not allowed to cherry pick, I would much rather have 15% of an SBE pool that we have in Riviera Beach as opposed to 25% that's within the county. And the reason I'm saying that is because 25% set aside for small business enterprises in the county could mean you can get anyone from Jupiter all the way to Lake Park, pick up in Mango, and go all the way back down to Boca Raton and not to the Glades and just hop over Riviera Beach. I would much rather that we take a more specific approach with assessing our needs and perhaps not using a piggyback, because then we can actually do more value engineering to figure out exactly what our costs and our needs would be, as opposed to accepting this and seemingly ensuring and guaranteeing that SBEs that's registered through the city of Riviera Beach as vendors have first preference, as opposed to Global Tech being able to go and get a firm out of, Delray Beach or Green Acres for that matter. So why wouldn't we be doing this? Because it's, our needs are much different than the counties.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Go ahead, Director Lowe.
Yes, sir. Actually, when we first tried to do this, we did try and piggyback an existing contract that we had with the same firm that was a design-build contract. Regrettably, as we went through the clauses of the contract, we discovered that it actually had a clause that caused the contract to be no longer usable. Because of the urgency of trying to do this work, since we have been spending quite a lot of money with our neighboring utility to meet the needs of our customers, we chose to go through this route rather than going out and going through the whole process of getting another bid. I agree with your concepts. It's just the urgency of this particular case. I would say to you that I know that this is just the first phase of this work that we're going to have to do. We have 27 wells, and this work is only hitting the first 8, plus doing some pressure profiling and testing of the pipelines. And it would make absolute sense going forward to ensure that we've had an appropriation go out by us to cover any subsequent work so that we could meet your terms. It's just that we are spending a lot of money as it is buying water because of the condition of our welfare.
Last time, Mr. Chair, I promise.
Go ahead.
You just said something that was most important and operable in this situation. You said because it's an emergency. Well, why not invoke the emergency procedures under our procurement code? Then we can actually do it in-house, and that actually changes. Because, we are here, and we can't forget it was back in January, we realized that we had well water contamination. Well, we didn't realize it. The board realized it, but apparently staff had already had some sort of knowledge of it. But given the urgency of us correcting wells that have been out of service and perhaps had cross-contamination, that seemingly is enough to trigger an emergency procurement to get this done. That way we can actually kind of fine-tune it to our needs as opposed to what the county's doing. And, I don't want to seem like I'm trying to create a avenue to circumvent, but it seems like if you're saying this is urgent, as you say, then I don't understand why our procurement process that calls out for emergency expenditures will kick in so that we can be a better and more efficient and not have to worry about the bureaucracy of dealing with the county's contract. We can do us a contract that's tailored to what we need, because number one, I don't know where we are in these reporting in terms of what has occurred with our previous past incidents, which we're going to have a discussion about here in a minute with the I guess our water treatment process failure. But I think, to me, seemingly it would constitute an emergency, but I'm not qualified, but that's just my humble opinion. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Spiritus?
Mr. Lowe, just to clarify something, you said pre-treatment is what you're considering for this plant right now? Is that pre-treatment before it gets to the well or pre-treatment before it gets to the plant?
Pre-treatment as it gets to the plant before it goes to the membranes.
Isn't that the whole purpose of membrane, is so that you don't have to do pre-treatment?
The particular contaminants that we're dealing with would cause that problem. One of the instances I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of oxygen getting in the system, and the net result is that we are precipitating iron, and it's that which is then blocking the membranes.
Okay, well, I'm familiar with iron and water coming from New York, so that's certainly something we don't want to see coming into our water system. Second question, is there a reason that we don't just do design and go out to bid and let it be competitive? Why are we always doing design build?
You have to bid within design build in the processes we're using, so we do get bids.
Well, is there a reason you don't just do the design work and then put it out to bid for a contractor?
You can do that. It takes longer, but you can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Spiritus. Additional comments from the board?
Chair,
Go ahead.
so what does that mean for this particular item? I think that the bigger question for me is the fact that a third of the wells are down, and when asked the question, the response is maintenance, and I'm wondering why there has been no maintenance. And then there are other issues that come up. I also asked during the agenda review, why is it that we're paying for this and not, for the water plant? There are numerous questions in regards to the processes and what happens at the water plant, and it's not good. So I think I'll wait until the next item to get into that. But I really have some strong issues with how this water plant is being run.
Thank you. Additional comments from the board? So from my understanding, as we are looking to call a special meeting after legal has reviewed for legal sufficiency on this item about piggybacking, if the board is all clear with that, Madam Clerk? Ms.
The-
Miller Anderson, go ahead.
The motion, it's still the motion that he made where he tied it in with it, or is he gonna make it, make a motion to postpone?
I'll make a motion to postpone this item until the next meeting, and then hopefully we'll have a special meeting on July 24th.
I believe the special meeting would need to be noticed today for next week.
Yes, it
Madam
has
Clerk?
to be within 10 days. I have the charter here, I can check. But I believe you all have to be noticed within 10 days.
So we wouldn't be able to host it on the 24th.
And I believe 7 days for the public. Give me just a moment.
Chair.
Go ahead.
So if I can, Madam Clerk, I don't believe that applies. That applies to regular meetings. You have to receive a 10-day notice, but emergency meetings, the notice requirement is
48 hours.
Reasonable.
Reasonable time?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. McCoy is correct.
So for clarity, there's no timeline. We can notice for next week to bring this item back before our meeting, before the CRA board.
For a special meeting, there's a shorter time period.
Okay.
so.
Board Member McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to understand, did we shift in how we do our agendas? Ms. Nguyen, at least when we had the, what was the system called, Novus? This went through departmental reviews. I guess, was this not reviewed for legal sufficiency prior to us having it on the agenda?
Mr. Chair.
It was.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Evans?
Board Member McCoy, yes, it does go through the process that's reviewed by all the appropriate departments. In the Novus agenda system, it just communicated on the agenda cover the departments in fact approved it as it went through the process. So if you go to the back of this item in the actual agenda software, the Granicus, it does show that it went through the appropriate reviews from procurement, the department, legal, and the like.
And I apologize, Mr. Chair.
But
Again, I'm sorry for being tardy, but is there something else that legal and Ms. Nguyen needs to review in terms of this? If it's already been through their department?
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Spiritus, go ahead.
Well, Commissioner McCoy, I asked council whether or not they reviewed this for the purpose of whether we can legally piggyback this if we've met all the time periods and whether we're meeting all of the state and county requirements for piggybacking. And my response was no.
Your response?
The
Or,
response from the council was no, that they have not done it yet.
or then it wasn't
No,
legally?
can I clarify? I'm sorry, Dr. Spiritus. What I said was that that is a function of procurement. So you're correct that legal had not reviewed it to see if they could piggyback because that is a function of procurement. It's not a function. If procurement says that piggybacking is acceptable, legal signs off on it once I review the contract. But I don't look at any of the procurement requirements because there is a separate line, if you will, between procurement and legal. And so procurement said that piggybacking was acceptable.
Right, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
So all I was saying, Commissioner McCoy, was that I feel more comfortable knowing that our in-house counsel has reviewed this to ensure that we're meeting all of the procurement requirements legally with piggybacking dates, et cetera, before we approve a $4 million plus project.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Spiritus, your motion is
To postpone this item until the next meeting of the utility, and that we have a special meeting of the utility on July 24th at 5 p.m.
Thank you.
Emergency meeting, correct?
Utility meeting, correct.
Emergency, not special, correct?
Emergency.
Right, emergency meeting of the utility board district
Thank
on July 24th.
Thank you.
Second still stands. Additional comments from the board?
Yes.
Board Member McCoy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not inclined to support it. Number one, seemingly I would have imagined that should have been done. Secondly, I mean, we got a water crisis. This is a 2-year-old contract. Actually, yeah, 2022 is when it was executed. And, I'm not sure exactly what we were looking for. But lastly, who is going to be doing the owner's rep on this? Surely you can't spend $5 million without someone watching for the utility district's interest on this.
We've been working with Brown and Caldwell.
Okay. And are they familiar with these contracts?
They're familiar with this work. Yep.
Okay. And I'm specifically gearing that members towards the SBE requirements because we've just got bombarded for the last 3 weeks on emails regarding previous projects that specifically excluded the SBE. So I don't want to necessarily go forward with this project either today or even next week if we're not clear on who's going to be charged with monitoring in compliance.
I'll certainly work with them. We did check with the firm Global Tech, and they certainly have accepted that they have to meet those or exceed those requirements. So we will be monitoring it, yes.
But they can't exceed it. They have to meet it, correct?
They have to at minimum meet it, yes.
Okay, but I thought there was no deviations from the contract as was done at the county. You can't change anything.
Well, maybe I'm confused, but you can't necessarily get it exactly to the dollar right. You're supposed to hit 25%.
Okay, you're speaking of SB. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Spears, go ahead.
Director Lowe, you mentioned the owner's rep, the firm Caldwell is who you wanted to use. Aren't they very busy right now doing our water plant and the engineering on that project? Are they going to have the time to do this project right now, or is that going to take away from what they're doing on the water plant?
They've already been working with us on this. I can double check with them, but they have been in the same meetings, every meeting we've had as we've put together this work program and looked at the needs, because it's also doubling up with the same issues that we're discovering as we deal with the pilot process and all of those issues. They're sort of tying together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments from the board?
Chair.
Board Member Lanier, go ahead.
The only way that I will support this, and I will in terms of, because of the emergency status of water, and I think that we'll get to that at the next item. But for the record, I have no confidence in the utilities director in terms of doing work at the water plant, providing information to the council about the water plant. I just don't have it, but for the sake of this being an emergency status, I will vote to move this forward.
Additional comments from the board? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Board Member Spiritus? Board Member Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member McCoy? Vice Chair Lanier?
Yes.
Chairperson Lawson?
Yes.
Passes with Board Member McCoy dissenting.
Thank you. 7B.
Item 7B, Resolution Number 12-24 UD, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the City of Riviera Beach Utility Special District, Palm Beach County, Florida, authorizing the payment of the fine and administrative charges from the Palm Beach County Health Department Consent Order WP 12523 in the sum of $80,842.60 and providing an effective date. Mr. Chair, we do not have any public comment cards in this item. The acceptance of the cards is now closed.
So moved.
Second. Mr. Evans? I'm sorry. Yeah, Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if I can have the director of the Utility Special District, Mr. Michael Lowe, to make this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm Michael Lowe, Executive Director of the Utility Special District. As a precursor, I will be making a presentation with regards to this and providing some explanation behind what is going on here. As people are aware, the Health Department did issue a public notice in which they cited 13 items that they said we were at fault with, and that in consequence, once we'd gone through that process with them, they then evaluated the situation, and they've come forward and made what's called a short form consent order offer to us, which includes $70,795,000 in civil penalties, plus $10,047.60 for administrative costs. In the offer, they gave us the opportunity to go and meet with them to discuss this. We did go to the health department and held a meeting with them. And during that meeting, we did make a request to see if we could use what's called an in-kind resolution to a short form consent order, which is often done. Normally, an in-kind resolution is some form of project that is associated with the nature of the problem that the health department found. In this particular case, they told us that no, they were not prepared to allow us to do in-kind work. The in-kind work is normally 1.5 times the value of the civil penalties. You still have to pay the administrative costs separately. So we had a fairly extensive meeting, but they indicated that they certainly were not prepared to do that, nor do they have that policy at this point with this type of issue. So that said, we now had to request of them, due to the size of the penalties, that we didn't have the authorization. We do have to come to you as the governing board to get permission to pay. We have requested of them a time extension until the end of this month, which would then allow us to process everything and to accept the payment, make the payment. This, being a short form consent order, would then close the issue as far as the health department is concerned. I feel it's appropriate at this point to try and give a more detailed explanation, as far as I can, of what exactly went on and what the learning processes are and what we have put in place in order to try and prevent this sort of thing happening again. To start with the first incident, and there are actually, I think it's a total of 6 different citations. The district took a routine sample at sample point number 38 on Caribbean Boulevard on the 6th of June. We received notification the following day that we had what's called an E. coli positive hit. This means that repeat samples are automatically triggered, and you need to notify the health department. Some repeat samples were taken at that point and at several surrounding sample points. All of these repeat samples were clear of E. coli and total coliform. The USD should have taken samples within 5 connections either side of the original sample point. So even though we had all of those clearances, because we didn't take that particular action, we have automatically triggered a cascading events which bring you to the total of the 6 different violations. Triggered monitoring is required because we're not a 4-log site. We don't have what they call 4-log virus deactivation. And so with our process, this is common with most lime plants in this part of the world. But this triggers what's called, you have to take samples of source water at that time to check that what you found in the distribution system wasn't in the source water. And because of the way they did that sampling, they did not do that. If the samples had been taken following the correct procedures and everything had come back clear, there would have been no further action needed. Failure to sample correctly causes uncertainty and results in a presumption of there being an actual problem. This requires further actions to be taken, which were not followed correctly, and in consequence triggered additional violations. A couple of things were done by the district in consequence of this. The first thing is that we were, it necessitated us doing what's called a level 2 environmental evaluation of our process. A level 2 study was done and it was used, an outside agency came in to do that. So we don't do it, someone else comes in to check. And there are various parts to that, which includes the source water distribution system, the actual process itself within the plant, and the distribution system, and finally, also our sampling techniques. That report is available and is on the website and has been there for ever since we published the last public notice from the health department. In addition, we also undertook hydraulic modeling. We have a mathematical model of our distribution system, and the health department asked us to go through the model and to see what that would show. There is the results of that modeling is also out on the website, where it shows what there was an area of uncertainty near sample point 38. The hydraulic model looks at the age of water, how it flows between the various parts of the city, and it's very precise. And we had to send them all of the data surrounding the model, as well as the whole time lapse that we used to look at it. With regards to what corrective action have we then taken with regards to that? Firstly, it necessitated us to have a revised sampling plan. Based upon the number of people within the service area, determines how many sample points we are supposed to have and the frequency that we should sample them, which is each of them once per month. Currently, there are 42 sample points, but as our population expands, we are close to triggering a point where we have to add additional sample points. So our revised sampling plan has in fact got those additional points added to it so that we can remain in compliance. In addition, and very specifically, the new process with the sampling plans requires that you clearly identify the 2 connection points within 5 connections either side of each sample point that will be used when you have to go and do the retesting. Extensive work also has gone into that sampling plan where it details all the regulations and is used as a training module with our own sampling people. It provides all of the regulations necessary that they should be following with our sampling system. That plan is now with the health department, and we are awaiting their approval of it. We are nonetheless following that plan and those various sample points accordingly as we wait for their final approval. In addition, I mentioned earlier about 4-log virus deactivation. We have hired an engineering firm who are looking to see if modifications can be made to our chlorination systems that would meet the requirements of this rule. One of the things we have to watch is that this rule actually fights with another rule that we have to work with. So they're doing that work now. They've come up with some preliminary proposals which we're still looking at. But it would require us to move our injection points and to have a sufficient residence time within the system. Probably also to add, because of the way the rule works, additional automated sampling points, because you're not allowed to go manual. You're supposed to keep everything happening automatically. So that work is ongoing. It may be that to go to 4-log virus deactivation is prohibitively expensive because of the nature of our process. That's often the case. That's why many people are moving away to a different treatment technology. You have to provide a fairly significant residence time within your system at a higher level of free chlorination in order to ensure that you have killed off any potential viruses. The new water plant will meet that rule very easily through the nature of the process itself. The next issue that we had was with regards to the incident at well 14. Well 14 was sampled on June the 22nd, and it was clear, but a couple of other wells showed an issue. So all 3 wells were rechecked. The other 2 were clear, but well 14 came back E. coli positive. The well was shut down immediately, and work was performed on the well head, and then clearance samples were taken per protocol before placing it back in service. Although shutting the well down was the correct move, there were several subsequent errors which have resulted in the violations that were noted. Firstly, again, the Department of Health should be notified. Since the plant is not 4-log certified under the groundwater rule, the USG should have issued a Tier 1 notice similar to the one we eventually published in January regarding this event. And lastly, although we did take the 5 test samples, we didn't take them immediately the next day because we'd found an issue with the well. So that issue, again, triggered another violation. What corrective action did we take? Further investigation determined that well 14 had been difficult to get clearances on in recent times. The well was taken offline and taken apart for a special inspection. Several deficiencies were found with the seals, both at the head and on the riser piping, and these were all corrected. We also cleaned up the area around the well. We changed out the air release valve and its location. We also moved the sample point, and we chlorinated the well, and it then was brought back online per protocol and has not had any issues since. The point to pick up here is that under the rule, it is important that if we have a well in that situation, which is possible depending on your sampling protocols, you should immediately not only shut it down as we did, but notify the health department and the customer base if we're not 4-log. The next item was a June bacterial reporting that came in late. There's no excuse. This was there were several people absent from the staff at that time, but we were late in sending it in. You are supposed to have everything into them by the 11th of the month. They noticed the deficiency, called us, and we got the data in immediately after that. The next item that was issued was what's called a total coliform positive on sample point number 1. Sample point number 1 was sampled on December the 22nd. That's a Friday. The results came back on the Saturday, but we were in the middle of the Christmas break and the labs were not available. The rule requires triggered monitoring of all wells in operation on December the 22nd and the resampling of that sample point. Because of the holiday break, that wasn't done immediately, which resulted in 1 violation. And because they weren't taken in time, the rule assumes that the result was valid. And because the plant is not 4-log, a Tier 2 notice is required. Again, the samples must be taken within 5 connections either side of the offending sample point. Corrective action by the USD, beyond obviously rechanging all of our sampling protocols, we also are going to ensure that we don't undertake sampling at a date such as that, where it is very difficult to take any resulting actions because you don't have any labs that are available to do the work. I think it is worth pointing out that we recognize the importance of getting rapid bacteriological results. And
If we can have the phones turned off, please, or silenced. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Lowe.
thank you. The importance of this, and as part of the new plant, it is the intention that our compliance personnel will start doing the bacteriological testing. That's not an unknown thing. A lab I managed in the past did that at a water utility I worked at. You have to have what's called NELAC certification. That's a national standard that just checks that the personnel doing the work are capable of producing accurate results. And they are tested every 6 months to ensure that's the case. The final issue that we had was the dissemination of false or misleading information with respect to the Tier 1 notice. All I can say is that the Health Department were not happy with the written and public comments that were made at that time. So that's the list of all of the violations that are covered by this short form consent order. People might ask, there's still an ongoing investigation by the Office of the Inspector General, and we haven't received any final results from him. In fact, we've just sent further information to him the other day, and again, we will be tomorrow.
Thank you for coming, Director Lowe. Do we have any public comment cards?
Mr. Chair, we do not have any public comment cards on this item.
Question from the board?
Chair.
Board Member Lanier.
Yeah, this is very disturbing. This is actually very disturbing. First of all, the issue has been fecal matter in the water problems, but we have not been told anything about it. We had not been told anything about it. This happened in June of last year. That's a whole year. And now we're getting a report on what happened because the health department is telling us that we owe them $80,000 because of the fines. Because you put out information about the water that was not true. And I have been asking for an accounting of this water situation since we found out. And that was back in December, January, maybe. And still, and we have all of these violations because they were simple violations. You test the water, when it tests positive, you test it again, and you send the information to the health department, and that's how you get boil water notices and that kind of stuff. But none of that happened. None of it happened. And I'm angry because this is a year and a month later, and we're getting this droll presentation of what the fines are and what happened based on what the health department said, but not from utilities director. So I'm gonna stay right now because I can't. I'll come back to this. It's the situation is this: either you're in compliance or you're not. The regulations were totally ignored, and we were the last to find out. Residents were coming to the council requesting, begging information about the water. And nobody said nothing. That is unacceptable. I mean, nobody, it's a year and nothing till tonight. So it is really serious that we have a water plant, and that is how we live, that has this many issues. And I remember when I've been here 5 years. I remember when I came to the council, there was a significant amount of wells that were down. The staff at the time brought the wells back online. They had got from under the consent order because of previous issues with the water. Now we were right back to consent orders and down wells because of lack of maintenance and lack of leadership. And that should not happen. Not with water. Now, anything else, we can see, okay, how are we going to fix this? But the water issue is unacceptable, and you cannot sit here and tell me that this presentation should suffice for what has happened to our water and that we didn't know about it. I'll digress for now. I'm just angry.
And to that point, Board Member Lanier, that Director Lowe is the concern, because I guess communication is all that our residents wanted. This was an administrative error, and this was not clearly stated to the health district. In addition to the fact that we understand as a board, we inherited a water plant that is 25 years past its useful life. That's not the fault of this board. That's not the fault of this administration or these staff. But an administrative error that's costing our residents over $80,000 is truly unacceptable. That is not something that we should be able to stand for when it comes to the fact of a simple notice should have been sent over to the health district. And we could have advised the residents so that we wouldn't be sitting here trying to answer questions a year later. As my colleague said, that's not acceptable to our residents, and we need to make sure that we are being held accountable and we have to hold our staff accountable. Board Member Spiritus? Go ahead.
We know that in 2014, 2012, actually, we had an independent engineering report that told us to scrap the existing water plant. That same report told us that the wells, many of them needed to be replaced. This goes back, as I said, to 2014. As you know, I've been speaking about this for years. I don't think we can put all the blame on one person right now. I'm clearly not happy with the fact that we did not report to the public the issues that were going on. But we have to take some of the responsibility here as a board with respect to getting the system functioning properly and safely for the community. I'm not happy right now with the stages that we're at with building the new plant and putting in new wells, because I think we need new wells, obviously. Just repairing existing wells isn't going to do the job that we need done here. Director Lowe, I appreciate your capabilities and your knowledge of water plants, but we go back 3 months ago and you told us we were 30% complete in the design work. We're probably at that exact same point right now, 3 months later. I don't know how much further on we are, but I know that you have to do value engineering. You have a lot of work. You're redesigning this. I don't understand why it wasn't done correctly in the first place. And I don't blame you. I blame our engineers that we're paying $16 million to, which is an awful lot of money for a water plant. The numbers that we've received, the $300 million number that we received, or even if it was a $200 million number, is probably double what most other municipalities are paying right now for new water plants that are going online. As a matter of fact, the former community that I work for up in New York is putting in a brand new water plant right now for $80 million, and it's a municipality that's double the size of Riviera Beach. So I'm concerned with I'm not looking in the rearview mirror now. I'm looking out the windshield, and I'm concerned about whether when and how long it's going to take us to resolve all the issues we have with our water system. That's it.
Thank you, Board Member Spiritus.
Mr. Chair.
Board Member Millis and Board Member McCoy.
I actually, at the very beginning, when you opened up your statement prior to giving the report, I thought I heard you say something to the effect of this issue being a little thing. And I think that in itself is just, I don't want to say it, but it just seems to me that it was not a big deal. even during some of the news reports, I felt that it was not coming across as being very important or high importance that we had the situation going on. And it was very difficult during those times trying to explain to people what was going on with our water when we, in fact, didn't have the information ourselves. I remember when this happened back in 2015, 2016, when we had all of these consent orders, they allowed us to do in-kind. For whatever reason this time, they're not doing it. I would venture to say probably because of the way in which this went on. They're not. It seems that he wasn't bending to allow us to give us any type of breaks to fix the situation. Give us any type of breaks to fix the situation. Sorry. And so, as I said before, when we had this issue before, we were able to do some projects, do in-kind, do some projects that would actually help out with the building of, or fixing the problems that we did have and not exactly have to cut them a check. But in this situation, we're having to cut them a check. And this didn't have to be this way. For whatever reason, it was not done. And I wrote down that you said, there were times, some of the situations occurred like during the holiday break. Are we saying that during the holidays, we don't have people on staff to do what needs to be done during that time? Because I'm pretty sure we have people on call. It can just answer that for me, please.
We have, sorry, yes, we do have people available to take the samples. We don't have laboratories that can test them.
So it is expected during a holiday, or if we're short, that it goes without being done until someone's available.
You have to have a laboratory within the time frame of when the sample was taken. I think the blame that we should have is that we took a sample just before a holiday when there was no opportunity, should that sample fail, of then getting the retesting done in the time that is prescribed by the rule.
So if something occurs during the holiday, you're not expected to do it when it needs to be done, whenever it occurs?
We wouldn't normally be testing during a holiday period of that type of testing. Just to explain, there are, as I said, there's 42 sample points and there's up to 27 wells. On a monthly basis, every operational well is tested and every sample point is tested. The plant itself undertakes testing on a routine basis every 2 to 4 hours, depending upon what the issue is. So they are testing to ensure that adequate chloramines are going into the system at any one time and that the plant is operating within the correct parameters any time of the year, any day of the week. This is when you come to the sampling in the distribution system, you have to rely upon either, if we don't have our own lab, which we're aiming to have, you have to rely on the availability of outside laboratories. And if you were to take the samples, then they would no longer be valid for the time the lab was available.
To me, that just doesn't make sense. And that's me. Maybe that's me. But if something occurs and it needs to be done, I just don't see how we're supposed to wait. But if that is where you're saying it's supposed to go, okay. But, in terms of just taking this whole situation seriously, I just didn't feel that when it was given to us, or at least told to us back at the beginning of the year, it didn't appear to be a serious situation for you. It was almost like this is something that happened. Obviously, you can't go and undo what happened, but I just think that because we've had this situation, these types of things that have happened over the years, I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that people can become distrusting of what it is that we're telling them, because they've been through situations like this before. And so when we have to approach things like this again, it's important that we understand the climate, the situation that we're in, so that we don't lose the trust of the people. And I think that the way this played out, it truly impacted the trust trustworthiness on your part as well as the council or the city at that point, because nothing no one was saying was being believed. And the fact that we're now here, as my colleague said, a year and a month later, trying to explain what happened back then is very difficult. I'm glad to hear that we do have things in place now so that we don't have this issue again. But we really, moving forward, just as we just talked about this 4.8 million project here that needs to be done with the wells. As my colleague stated, I don't understand. We had worked very hard to get these wells back online. Due to lack of maintenance is why we're now back where we were before.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
We did have outside engineers investigate the well field prior to my getting here. They did issue a report that arrived about the same time as I started working in the utility. And the report basically said, re-drill every well. We looked at that report, we looked at the state of our well field, and we believe that indeed some of the wells will have to be re-drilled. But the reality is that we think we may be able to make good on some of them for a lesser sum of money. I've had a preliminary cost estimate to re-drill a well, including the wellhead, and the cost is, the last time this estimate was put together, was $1.35 million per well.
So are the wells completely down? You said earlier that 1/3 of them were down?
1/3 of them are currently down, either because because they've got, the pumps have failed, or we have problems with, we're not getting clearances quickly enough, or other issues with the well. So we are planning, we're going to pull them apart. What we haven't done, which we need to do, if you're going to work on these wells, is you will pull everything out from under the ground. Now, some of these wells are 70 foot deep, some of them are 200 feet deep. You pull everything out, all the pumps, all the pipes, take everything off the head of the well. You then send cameras down and you TV everything all the way down to the bottom of the well, and you look at what the condition is. You do drawdown tests. In other words, how quickly is the well refilling with water as you pump out? What sort of level do you get in the well naturally from the aquifer? Where are we setting the pumps? What's the condition of the very bottom of the well? It may need acidization. It may need a week of redevelopment as you clear the space around the bottom of the well so that you can get it to perform better. You know, some of these wells, when they were originally put in the 60s, are destined to do, say, 600-800 gallons a minute. Whereas at the moment, we're getting 200 gallons a minute.
So my question, Mr. Lowe, is, was 1/3 down when you came?
It's been not the same 1/3, but we've been fighting the same issue throughout, yes. It's actually been getting worse as we go because we're trying to, as we're trying to deal with it, yes. I would point out that it's not quite as simple as just having the wells online, because we are actually, within the terms of our consumptive use permit, we're getting ourselves in the situation where until the new plant comes along, we actually are going to exceed the permitted capacity of the well field. I was looking at numbers the other day. A lot of the wells that are down are in our western well field. We're already running our eastern well field at 109% capacity. We've obviously got to get it down below 100% of permitted capacity. We're able to get the water, but the consumptive use permit specifies on a monthly basis as well as an annual basis how much we're allowed to pump from both the east and the western part of our well field.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. But just based on the way things went, Mr. Lowe, I absolutely don't have any confidence at this point in moving forward with things. I really don't, because that was a serious situation. And again, I don't feel that it was taken as seriously as it should have been when that was going on. And the fact that we were not notified, we did not follow simple procedures, which are supposed to be just foundational procedures, standard procedures that are supposed to be done. I mean, the last 7 to 8 months from the time we knew about this, or at least heard about it from the mayor, or I think it was the mayor, was it the mayor or Mr. McCoy? One of the two. It has been a mystery forever, and just getting information from here and there, it made no sense. And that's just kind of where I am with it. Thank you.
Board Member McCoy?
Thank you. Mr. Lowe, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said well number 14. What was the date on that in which the violation first occurred?
It was, I believe, the end of June, June the 27th, I think.
Okay. I thought I see that. I thought I heard you say the 20.
It was first sampled on the 22nd, and then it got resampled. So it was good on the 22nd, but it failed the second time it was sampled.
Is that routine to do another sample 5 days later?
It's not. I don't know why the then team did that.
Okay. Actually, I got some procedural questions. So you referenced the OIG, and I'm not exactly sure why this is at the OIG's office. The OIG's office is the Office of Inspector General, and they investigate fraud, waste, and abuse of public resources. I'm not sure what the fraud, the waste, or the abuse of public resources is in this circumstance. So number one, my question is jurisdiction. Under what jurisdiction are they reviewing this? There's some sort of discretionary jurisdiction, because this doesn't fall up under, their scope.
I'm afraid I can't answer that because I'm just responding to the questions that I'm getting. The OIG's office is very much concentrating on this issue. By the nature of the information they have sought from us, it's directed towards this particular incident.
Okay. So who has been working with you on this in terms of understanding this from the Department of Health standpoint? Do you have familiarity with the Florida administrative rules and state statutes and that sort of thing relative to water quality?
Yes.
Okay. So when these, instances first came up, prior to them being violations, who at the department was notified that these were actual violations?
As far as I understand, the Department of Health was not aware of anything until the people sent the sampling for the month in late.
Okay, so again, who at the City of Riviera Beach Utility District received the violations from the health department?
I'm sorry, when did we hear from the health department that we had violations? I'm just trying to clarify.
Who was the individual that the health department sent these violations to?
The first we formally heard, that I formally heard of it, was on July the 29th.
I think I'm missing the question. Who did the health department send the violations to? Is what I clearly heard, board member.
They sent a letter to myself.
Okay. And how much after the violation had occurred, did we or did you receive the notice of violation?
I received it on July the 29th
And that would have been for the June 27th?
for all of the incidents in June.
Okay. So, and I'm trying to establish why we're even here. So please, if you could give me a little bit of latitude, Mr. Chair, and
Go ahead,
ask you
board member.
some background questions.
Please.
And Mr. Lowe, the reason I'm asking is because, you know, looking at this letter that is 5 pages from the Health Department dated May 24, 2024, they're going back to violations which occurred over a year ago. So should I expect, or is it typical that when a violation occurs, it's 30 to 40 days before you actually get formal notice? Is that typical?
Yes, if there's a violation, it takes a while for them to process through their system. Obviously, if the protocol had been followed, they would have been aware of the issues beforehand, and we would have been able to work with them.
You mind repeating that for me so I can follow?
Well, if, for instance, let's take one of the examples, let's take well 14. Well 14 comes back with a positive sample. What should have happened immediately when people were notified is they should have rung the health department and informed them of that. And then they would have worked with the health department to issue the correct notices. I mean, the important thing missed is that the health department was not notified.
Okay, so I guess I'm already into the statute, chapter 403, which I imagine you're familiar with, relative to enforcement for environmental control and public health.
I'm familiar, but not in great detail. They operate the statute. I just work with them as they, yeah.
Okay, so when you get these notices, do you refer to legal? Do you take this back to the utility district's attorney?
Generally, at first, when you first hear from them and you get a warning letter, you don't necessarily do that, but you do immediately work with them. In my case, I obviously inform administration that I have received this warning letter. The warning letter requires you then to set a meeting with them, and sometimes it takes a while for the meeting to take place as you put everything together. So you then have a meeting with them. The health department then at that point will ask you to clarify certain points with regards to the issue, which you then go through and you formally respond to them in writing, which we did. And then you follow on with the further communications as you get them from the health department.
But
Mr. Lowe, so the warning letter is the same as a violation letter, a notice of violation?
It's a notice of a possible violation.
Notice of a possible violation. Interesting. I was trying to give you the benefit of the doubt. So that's not even the actual formal notice of violation.
It's notice that they believe there is a violation and they're seeking further information.
Okay. So I guess I'm curious to see, and I certainly would much rather use $80,000 than putting together a program to rebate individuals that probably have trouble paying their utility bills. But why wouldn't we avail ourselves to any of the remedies that's called out inside a state statute, like requesting a formal hearing and perhaps using a position that this was a one-off situation, or the reason that we did not provide an additional follow-up sample because the lab wasn't immediately open and accessible for us to furnish that and shut down the well in the meantime. So why wouldn't we actually invoke any of the safeguards that's in place that allows us due process in order to respond, like requesting a formal hearing, which actually costs the utility district nothing?
We did request a meeting with them, which we had.
No, that's not what I asked.
If I may, we then listen to what they had to say, and we then respond accordingly. And we do attempt to obviously to put forward the, as you would put it, the mitigating circumstances that we feel are appropriate in this case. And we did do that, and we do that every time. The health department, it depends whether or not they accept that. I mean, one of the things that did come forward with that was that when we met them again in January, this was not the first meeting, when we met them in January, well, so we met them in December when all they talked about was well 14. They didn't talk about any other issues, which resulted in our notice that we put out on January the 19th, I believe it was. When we went to meet them subsequently was when they started talking about, in much more detail, about the sample point number 38. And it was at that meeting where they specifically suggested that we looked at hydraulic modeling to prove one way or another whether or not the how the system was impacted by this result. And it was the hydraulic modeling results in detail that were sent to them, and which they then responded with the map that was put out by us and is still out on the website.
Okay, so I'm looking at the statute, Mr. Lowe, and I want to understand. So I'm going to repeat myself, and if you can, be very specific in your response, because you're speaking of a warning letter, and there's no reference in state statute regarding warning letters. What I do see, though, in this enforcement section is the notice of violation, and it's usually, actually, it's not usually, it's actually an administrative proceeding shall be instituted by the department serving of a notice of violation upon the alleged violator by certified mail. So my question is the notice of violation the same as the warning letter?
I would say yes, they call it a warning letter, though. I go by the terminology that gets used. If I read the entire head, I suspect that it says notice of violation and warning letter.
Okay, well, seemingly it just, all right.
I don't have every document with me here today, but
I want to ask questions of the process. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, it took a long time for us to know, but I just kind of want to understand. So once we get the actual certified mail, it references, surely it has to reference the Florida Administrative Code. It has to reference the CFR Code of Federal Regulations. It has to reference the state statute. So at some point, someone should have to be able to read this, look at the Code of Federal Regulation, read it, look at the state statute, see what rules are applicable. But I'm just trying to figure out if this was in fact an error of someone not actually going back to do another sample timely enough. I mean, I would think that that's a mitigating circumstances, especially if we took the well offline. You know, I mean, I don't think there's an expectation of a perfect system, but I think if you're delinquent, it seems to me that that in itself would kind of constitute a violation. So I'm just trying to figure out at what point could we have asked for a formal hearing to explain that? But I guess I'm not sure, you know, where that actually comes in at, as opposed to us now being on the back end where we have no options. And the reason I say that is we're being asked to approve a resolution when we really haven't gotten to the underlying cause of how there was a process breakdown. So I'm okay with paying the violation to the extent that I understand where was the process failure. I mean, it is what it is at this point, because I do see at this stage, according to statute, there's nothing that we can do about it. They might as well just go ahead and take it out of the city's utility account, because there's no way getting around it. But I'm just trying to understand, how do we like not avail ourselves to the remedies under law that would allow us to interpose some sort of, you know, defense, if you will, saying, well, because of the mitigating circumstances, but we didn't even do that. So Mr. Lowe, help me understand that part.
every single report we sent in was coming up with mitigating circumstances. So we were in communication with them on multiple occasions where we sent them data. They would then send us a request for additional information, and we would send that. So we were pretty clear, I believe, in our responses as to exactly what went on and to why we believe, what the situation is. I can do. I can't answer for how the health department wish to.
Mr. Lowe, thank you. Okay, you said you guys met with them. Florida Statutes, Chapter 403.121, subsection 3 allows or provides, I should say. 3E provides that after filing a petition requesting a formal hearing in response to a notice of violation in which the department imposes an administrative penalty. So I'm not talking about a meeting. How do we, or why didn't we request a formal hearing after this violation has been assessed against us? If you're not sure, then that's cool. And the reason why I said that is because I was just looking at the relief that's called out here, that there is a mediator. And of course, I think the ideal situation is not allow this to get to some sort of punitive penalty. We can figure out mitigation and mediation methods that, if we go to a mediator and say, who's obviously independent, say we've implemented these measures, as opposed to saying that to the health department, a mediator can actually sit the parties down and be able to determine what's suitable given the circumstances. But if it's aggravated where you don't even, these instances of violations are aggravated where you don't even give notice even after the fact, I can understand why the department wouldn't be inclined to reducing its fine or civil penalties.
I have to be sorry. The department is watching everything, so.
But we operate in the sunshine, Mr. Lowe. So I would say let's keep that in mind, because at this point, you know what? I respect the fact that you're sitting here and you're taking these tough questions, because I really and truly believe that there's not somebody in this building that doesn't make a mistake. I just want to own it and figure out how we move forward.
I believe that as I've normally done and been experienced of in the past in handling matters with the health department, we've followed every normal procedure that we would have done in the other occasions when I had to deal with them.
Okay. All right. Well, sure. I would love to see the utility district's request for a formal hearing, because clearly that would allow us to go to a mediator and be able to say, hey, we took the well offline, if we did, because I don't even really know that we did. And, those process and procedural questions, like once we knew, what's the timeline on when the well went offline? Those are the kind of things that I want to see. And I don't know where that's at in the process. And certainly it shouldn't be an OIG that has to figure that out. Operationally, we know when that happened. And when can that actually be provided to us? And I guess perhaps the mayor would know this. Is the scope of the OIG's inquiry or investigation limited to the process?
Mr. Chair,
Mayor, go ahead.
the OIG's investigation is to find out who knew what and when. The process, we know now that the process was violated from the health department. So the OIG and the health department worked together to come up with that. My issue was when I would ask questions like you're asking, who knew what when, I could not get an answer. So the OIG is investigating through emails and interviews, kind of who knew what when, because we did not get that information 12 months a year or some months later.
Mr. Chair.
Good. Board Member McCoy, you finished?
Last question.
Go ahead.
I think we've pretty much gotten to where we were in January. You know where that's at? All right, cool. So we got to pay the fine, right? And I don't think, other than rehashing this, we're going to figure out anything. I just got one last question.
Board Member,
Mr.
go
Lowe,
ahead.
what would be the appropriate, if you had to actually offer up me a appropriate course of action at this point aside from the $80,000 penalty, as to what we should do in terms of holding someone accountable. I really would like to know from you. And I'm not saying it's you, but if it's you had 3 staff members that completely ignored the process, what is the appropriate, I guess, what would be the appropriate level of accountability that we as a board? And let me remind members why I say that, right? The utility district charter is completely separate from the city's charter. In fact, I'll take the members back to 2019. This board voted on a 4-1 vote, and you already know who the one vote was. That was the standalone, not to permit the city manager or not to delegate the city manager the authority to hire the utility special district director. The manager asked for the authority to hire the utility special district director because that is called out in our charter. So with that being said, Mr. Lowe, I want to see if you're going to offer me up some sort of fair or what you believe is necessary for us to address this, because, you know, we still don't even have the answers. And I want to get there, but it's hard to get there when we know we haven't even been provided how this even occurred or where the fundamental process breaks down are. So, and if it's, we need additional resources, if we need additional staffing, I mean, heck, I think we meet more than the members of Congress. So, you know, certainly this is something that should have come up, but I just want to know how we can get to a point of not dealing with this and making sure that folks are accountable in their role. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. And I'm really open to hearing his response if he has it. If not, you know, thank you.
Mr. Lowe?
In response, to say first that I'm still waiting myself to hear. I do not take this as an excuse. I was not actually present when the first sample was found. In my experience, the people should have immediately known what they're supposed to do and not do. We certainly were in a situation at the time when we literally just had our compliance manager resign. With regards to whether we need more resource, you are about to hear my request for additional resource as part of the budget process. I believe that we most definitely, which is why I'm working to do it within the plant itself, we need to bring, as far as we can, more testing processes into our remit and control, because not only does that enable us to respond quicker, it also means that the sorts of issues that people have picked up on about what happened over that holiday period are eliminated, because we can bring people in and do the testing. So I'm interested in hearing what the separate investigation comes up with, as since they have access to more emails than I have. I have my own emails that I can look at and have gone through.
Mr. Chair. Real quick, can you elaborate on that? You said you were not present when the first sample was found.
I was in another country.
So who was present?
Most of the rest of the staff were present.
Okay. I have some follow-ups, so I'm going to let Dr. Spiritus and then Mayor Felder go. Dr. Spiritus, go ahead.
All right. Mr. Lowe, I have 2 questions. One, we now know that many of the wells are offline. And my question is, what happens if we have a major fire in the city of Riviera Beach? Are we going to have the ability to fight that fire? And if we do, what will be the impact on the water system for the residents?
In the answer to that is that at the moment, yes, as long as we have the storage capacity that we have and we operate it as we should be okay with the fire. We have interconnects that we can open. There are 3 of them. One of them is with Seacoast Utility, which we use as a primary. There are 2 more with the city of West Palm Beach. On a pricing basis, we prefer to use the Seacoast interconnect. So we have 3 separate interconnects that we can open should we need water quickly and a means of communicating to them to get them open.
Second question, I've heard this asked and answered, but I'm not sure I'm satisfied with what I heard yet. Other than yourself, is there someone who's responsible to notify the health department whose job responsibility it is in your office other than yourself?
It would be the compliance manager.
That's the person that resigned.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Lowe, what was the first amount the health department was going to fine us before they came up with 80,000?
The 80,000 number was the first thing that we heard, but they did suggest a much higher number.
What was that
When-
number? What was that number?
I'm
You're
trying,
looking at Mr. Evans. I'm talking to you.
I know, I'm just trying to remember if I got it exactly right.
I know what it is.
It was in excess of $900,000.
$900,000.
Yeah.
Almost $1 million. All right? Yeah. And so to answer your question, I think we got a good deal. Okay. I think we got a good deal considering it was almost out of $1 million. Just in the conversation with Mr. Evans today, I think our investigation with OIG is, I'm getting an email that why we're not getting them the information they need. Why they keep asking for the information or whatever information they're asking. Now they're copying me on that. I see some people wanting to move in because I got copied on the email.
I know you're copied on the email. One of the recent things that they asked for was a copy of the log sheets that are handwritten and kept within the department. Each of them had to be, there's over nearly 500 of them. They had to be sent out to a graphics place to be scanned and printed because they're not a standard document size. They're a pretty large piece of paper. So we have to keep our records here. So we had to have them scanned and printed and sent over to them. I've just got another 40 of them, which we're sending tomorrow. We've cleared our backlog as of tomorrow morning, and I did communicate with the Inspector General earlier today.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mayor.
You made the statement you was not here when this report came out. What was the date the report came out?
I was not here when the test occurred.
The
I
test,
was here
right.
when the report
test.
came out in July the 29th.
Okay. Who done the test? Who did the test?
Who took the samples?
Yeah, who took the samples?
It was one of our lab techs who's no longer with us.
So you wasn't here. Who was in charge while you wasn't here?
The assistant director. He obviously needs to have been made aware, which,
Wait, what's his name?
Mr. Doyle.
Now you say he needed to be made aware.
Well, yes.
Of what?
If there was an issue, he needs to be aware of it in order to initiate any action. Yeah.
So he wasn't aware.
Sorry?
He wasn't aware?
I don't believe he was.
So who was aware? It goes back to Councilman McCoy. Like, this is why the OIG, because we're not getting answers, right? Like,
Right.
Like somebody had to know, right? The health department, whether it was a call, an email, a letter, it went to somebody saying, we see this issue. Who did that go to? And I don't mean to put you on trial. That's why I wanted the OIG to do the investigation. But you're here, and I hear a lack of confidence in you. I'm not sure. I have confidence in, we don't have to go there, but who received that information?
Sorry, who received the information?
The
that there
information
was
from
a-
the health department that says, listen, we see this issue.
The health department contacted the plant manager when the sampling, when the analyses hadn't been sent in yet.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mayor.
And the only reason I think, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
residents, if we can. We want to be able to ask the questions and we need to be able to hear the answers.
I know the
If we
public,
can.
I know the public
Go ahead, Mayor.
is want to know this information, as well as us. Uh, An investigation is what it is, an investigation. And I want this investigation to be thorough so we can have these answers, that we don't have to get to this point where we're still guessing. I do have one question, and I don't know, Mr. Pinkley, can I have Mr. Pinkley come up? Can he come up? Because I believe people want answers, and so let's give them some answers. Well, you got to have answers before you get action.
Residents, if we can please stop speaking out from the audience. We want to be able to have the conversation with our staff. Go ahead, Mayor.
There you go, Mr. Pinkley. When did you first find out about this issue?
Well, we get reports from the lab.
State your name for the record, please.
My name is Melvin Pinckney, water treatment plant manager. We get reports from the lab. The health department pretty much only goes by what they get from the lab. I got a report. It came across my desk, and but just not me. It goes to like 10 or 12 people. But when I saw that well 14 failed, I immediately shut it off. I did not make the initial call to the health department because that wasn't my position. I wasn't in that position to do that. That was the lab, the quality control manager that takes care of that. But I did shut the well off right away.
Okay, so you got the info. Did you email the health department back? Was there any correspondence with you and the health department?
I think I did because quite a few people was out. So I think I was one of the last persons there. So I was doing what I could. I made sure I shut the well off. And I think I relayed the message to the next person up, which maybe was the assistant director, maybe, not sure, it was a year ago. But we had some issues with the well. The well had a hole in it. And I think I spoke with Mr. Peters, and he was saying that we just need to make sure we do a notice, and we kept moving forward with the process.
So my question, Mr. Pinckney, was you one of the first ones to find out about this issue?
I don't think I was one of the first ones. Like I say, the lab sends the reports to like 10 people, 10 or 12 people.
Was Mr. Lowe working, or was he out of the country?
I can't recall. I don't remember that. I don't know if he was there or not.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Do you report anything to Mr. Evans or Ms. Jacobs?
No, I do not.
Have you ever?
Not concerning the water treatment plant.
Let me ask you this question. Something that is as important as that.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been in water for how long?
I've been in water for quite a while, since 85.
You would not contact our city manager or assistant city manager for an issue like this?
I contacted the next person in charge, which was the assistant director or the director. I moved forward in doing my part.
Okay.
Normally, I'm not in the chain of doing that. I just jumped in because so many people was out. Okay. So I started helping out where I could.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pinckney. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Additional comments from the board?
Yeah, I have one more comment.
Board Member Lanier, go ahead.
And the comment is that the no confidence vote with the utilities director, because listen, there are some mistakes that you can't make. And when it comes to water, that draws the line. So if an issue happened at the utilities plant, then we look to the utilities director. We don't look to city administration. We don't look to the library director. We look to the utility director. That is their job. If the city manager and the assistant city manager, who have departments that are split up, city manager has 7, 8 departments, assistant city manager the same amount in terms of departments. So if you're gonna put it on the city manager, then why skip over the director? That's the person responsible. Because you cannot go to the library director and ask him about the water. If that's the case, then what is he there for? You know, I mean, if you tell Mr. Evans that he has to be responsible for all these departments, which he is, but if he can't have people in those positions to be able to do their job, then of course it falls back on him. But let us start where it starts. That's the utilities director, period. And this is water, and this is serious, and we can't keep going back and forth like I don't know who we need to blame.
Mr. Chair?
So let me finish.
Go ahead.
So this is the issue here. The issue is that it's a year and a month old. Yes, we need to move forward, but we also have to have some accountability, period.
And just to follow up on that, go ahead, Board Member Lenny. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And what I'm saying here is that this is a serious department. This is not the library. This is not public works. This is water. It is its own entity, which means that whoever is over this entity has to be vigilant. We know the water department, we know the plant is failing. We got here and it was 25 years, that it had not been really taken care of. There were issues back in 2012 and 13. We knew that we had to do everything that we could to be able to hold this up, patch this up until we get to a new water plant. Mm-hmm. But apparently that has not been happening because we had an incident where we didn't know until a year later. And that is unacceptable. So we can keep going back and forth and we can put the blame on this person and that person, but we need to put the blame where it lies. The person who is responsible for the water plant, period. And we go from there.
Mr. Chair.
If I could just make one comment in reference to that and then let you go. The concern that I have with that is that, as Councilman Board Member McCoy said, 2019, we delegated the responsibility to allow for the city manager to hire the director. And we have two members that we hire as the city council. That's our city attorney and our city manager. So if we're ultimately going to see who's responsible, it's our city manager who is overseeing these departments. We have no control over hiring or firing our director because we delegated that responsibility. So Mr. Evans, we've been asking for updates. We've asked for clarity in regards to what's coming before us, and there's no reason we should be waiting on the OIG to give us a full report. And the fact that our director, Mr. Pinkney, they don't seem to have the answers is concerning to me. We want to be fully abreast on everything that happened, play by play, what actually happened, who was responsible for what, who was notified, because the reason we're asking these questions tonight, and we've given fair time to get a full report to us, is because we keep saying, Mayor said we're waiting on the report. We've said we wait on the report. Councilwoman, Board Member Lanier has been adamantly asking for details. Yet we're waiting on a report, but you're asking us to pay an $80,000 fine that the residents are going to hold us accountable for because it's coming out of their dollars. So now we need these answers before we can approve this and know what we're doing forward, because we're not going to spend $1 of the taxpayers' money unless we know what we're doing. So as my colleague said, we have to hold somebody accountable. I can't hold our director accountable because I can't fire him. But our person that we can hold accountable is our city manager. So we're asking for the clear details on what happened, where do we go from here, and how do we make sure it never happens again so that we can move forward as a community. Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm glad first Councilman McCoy brought it up. You cleared it up. I don't know if Councilwoman Shirley Lanier understood that you can't fire utility district director because you changed that. And I think Councilman McCoy was the only one that voted against it. So when you say the city manager and them is not responsible, I disagree because he hires him. Matter of fact, Ruth Jones lost her job, and if you read the statement, she said because she did not know. In the statement of her getting fired was you had every responsibility to know because you was the city manager. So what you said is not really accurate. And I'm glad these guys came and cleaned it up. So your no confidence in him doesn't mean that you can fire him. Who's responsible for him? And that's what we're trying to get down to. I mean, somebody has to hold him accountable. It can't just be you. Who you hold accountable is your manager and your city attorney. So thank you guys for clearing it up. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Additional comments from the board?
One more thing.
Board Member McCoy first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to clarify something, just so we're all clear. The resolution 32-19 was a resolution that delegated the authority to hire the utility district director to the city manager. It wasn't anything specific in terms of whether or not he stays there or what, but specifically that resolution called out the hiring of the utility district director.
Thank you, Board Member. Board Member Lanier.
I'd just like to close it out and say that, of course we can't hire and fire, and the mayor can't vote, but you can strongly recommend, you can strongly say, I have no confidence, and that's as far as it goes for us.
Board Member McCoy. Board Member
so-
Lanier, I'm sorry, finish your comments.
So all I'm saying is that the board cannot hire and fire any employees other than the city manager and the lawyer, the attorney. But what we can do is hold people accountable. I have never, in the 5 years that I have been here, said anything to any employee out of the way or publicly said anything to them about anything that's happened in their department or something that they had done wrong. But this water issue is something totally different. This is not a Scribner's error. This is not someone put the, wrong whatever somewhere. This is water, and I live here. I live here, I drink the water here. So I take it very serious. And we can go back and forth about who should be blamed, but I know that we need to get to the bottom of it. I do know that. I know we need to move on, but still, I have no confidence in the utilities director.
Thank you. Board Member McCoy, you had a comment?
Thank you. Perhaps, I'm not sure if it's out there or members have been provided with it, but there is something called the Utility Special District Charter, completely independent of the city's charter. That charter provides that we can hire and employ consultants and directors under our purview under the charter. Perhaps we cannot discharge him as an employee from the city of Riviera Beach, but certainly the utility district in itself, the only 5 persons that's listed as officers is the members of this body. So certainly we do have the authority to decide who runs the day-to-day operations of our utility district, and that's called out in our charter. So certainly I'm not interested in firing anybody, but I can tell you right now that authority exists, and I would love for the attorney to shed some light on this, but that authority exists with who this 5-member body decides is going to operate the day-to-day operations of the utility special district. And if you give me a second, I can pull it up specifically in the charter, but that is called out in our utility district charter. And quite frankly, the user services agreement is simply the contract that the UD has with the city of Riviera Beach to provide a number of different services. That's including employment, HR, the other sorts, but we do have the sole authority. And even if you look in the charter, it specifically delineates on more than one occasion that there is a distinction between the city and the district, and nothing contained in the city can bind or compel the utility district to do anything. So we have the sole control over who runs the day-to-day. And again, we don't have the authority to fire city employees, but we certainly have the authority to decide who runs our day-to-day operations.
Additional comments from the board? Madam Clerk, roll call.
This is the motion for resolution number 12-24 UD. Board Member Spiritus.
Yes.
Board Member Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member McCoy. Vice Chair Lanier. Chair Lawson?
No.
Yes.
The item passes with Vice Chair Lanier dissenting.
Thank you. Do we have any general public comment cards?
Mr. Chair, we do have 9 general public comment cards for Utility Special District.
Okay. Let's go into general public comment. Public comment shall begin at 5:45 unless there's no further business of the city, which in the event it shall begin sooner. In the event it's considered at 5:45, then the comments from the public shall begin immediately after the item's been concluded. Please be reminded, the utility district has adopted rules of decorum governing public comment during official meetings, which have been posted at the front desk. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the board may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting, or the building. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chair and board members, the acceptance of public comment cards for general public comments is now closed. First 3 speakers, Tiffany Williams, Lloyd Brown, and Margaret Shepherd.
Welcome, Ms. Tiffany.
Good evening. My question is, Tiffany Williams, I want to comment on Agenda 7B. My question is, who's going to be held accountable for this $80,000? The employees, we have 20+ policy and procedures that hold us accountable. We have a rope around our neck, and this is quiet up here. So several people need to be held accountable. Currently, we are negotiating our employee contract, and the language they want to put in there, if we breathe hard, we out the door. If we get sick and do not return to work within 6 months, we out the door. You have 15+ 20-year employees that built the foundation of this city, and this is what they're trying to do to us. You have cancer, you have other illness that may occur, and this is what they're trying to do to us. But when it comes to them, everybody quiet. We got an umbrella over us. Don't say nothing. We got to protect ourselves. But they're ready to chop our necks off. Recently, I watched the news, and they said people are getting COVID from wastewater, and Florida was in the red. Our guys in UD are complaining. What if they get sick? Can't return to work in 6 months because of COVID. This is what they're doing to the employees that you see working out here in this field, digging holes in this hot sun, in the cold weather. This is what they're doing. They want to blame it on filling vacancies. They had opportunity to fill this vacancy over here in city clerk office. Why didn't they do it? Now they're down to 2 people, right? Okay, so what, they want to contract the city clerk office out now? That's going to be their excuse? Mayor Felder, I was here when the former city manager was suspended and terminated for a water issue she inherited. And all that occurred within 45 days. The investigation should not and does not take that long. Who is going to be held accountable? The employees, because all this language here, all this money is going to be held over our necks. But they want to keep them quiet. You see how they're protecting each other. Nobody said anything. So I want you guys to pay attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Tiffany.
How you doing? My name is Lord Brown. And, this is not Flint, Michigan. Sorry, I'm in the wrong place. But anyway, let me just say this. Y'all keep talking about, you want to play that blame game. The water bad. So if you get a flat tire on 95, what you going to do? Walk back through where you've been driving? Find out where you picked up the nail? The problem is right here and now. To discuss how it got here, that don't make no damn sense. I see y'all drinking bottled water up there. And these people out here don't have the money like y'all do to buy bottled water. But if y'all start giving out bottled water, I'll wait till you get another water plant. But if you want to build a fire department and people still drinking this water and you know it now, And then you talk about building the police department and these people drinking this water. I had a friend. He was at Camp Lejeune. I had a friend who was at Camp Lejeune. He's not here no more. I got other friends at the VA who was at Camp Lejeune. You want to go out there and see how they are now? So you want to wait to Riviera Beach 10 years from now and then y'all will be out of here. Your insurance will pay these people like they paying the Camp Lejeune people who's suffering. Y'all sitting there like trying to figure out who did it. Who gives a damn who did it? Let's get it straight. I mean, honestly, you got a flat tire and you sitting there looking at it talking about, oh, let's go down the road and see if we can find the nails or the screws in the road where this flat tire came. No, the water's bad. And you know what? My neighbor water won't even go fast. The water things you put in, those meters, they're starting to stop all over the city. Could it be because of contamination in the meters? Honestly, because I know electronics, and electronics will mess up when you got different things running through it and flowing. And in my tub, you know what? It's brown. The water brown. I don't even use it no more. And I wouldn't come over here to ask for no help because they won't help me because I talk too much about them. But I don't care. And I'm not coming over here to be preaching. And you know what? We need to get some of these people in your churches. Y'all need to come over here and listen to what's going on. And instead of having a prayer meeting, have something where you can tell these older people. This lady came to me. She said, you know what? I didn't know they were going to do this. I can't even get channel 18. I say, they don't want you to get it. They doing stuff under the cover. You may as well not even have these meetings because when you come over here, you don't do anything with a damn person asks you. You sit down there and look. You look good in all your uniform. All y'all done gained weight because you're living up on the hall. And all these people, you can afford water. You can afford water. It's a lot of people can't. Start giving people water then if you're not going to build a plant tomorrow.
Next is Margaret Shepherd, Amon, and Mary Brown.
Margaret Shepherd, Riviera Beach. You cannot top Mr. Brown. We can continue to ask who's at fault. Who's at fault? Who really cares who's at fault? It's the head. It's the head. You can put it on Mr. Evans if you want to, but Mr. Lowe is in charge of water. I mean, how do anybody else know? Mr. Pickney say he didn't know who called. He can remember. I can remember. 7, 8 years old, I remember pretty good. Verbatim, when people talking to me, I started doing resumes, I snapped. Can't find my glasses or my keys, but I can definitely tell you what happened the next day. And it's a disgrace that you sit here while we suffer out. And what I'm really mad about is that I had to go out about 8 cases of water. My house looked like a warehouse, and yet my water bill is still flowing on. It's still going. And you sit here and play. They fired Ruth Jones that night because it was a $10,000 check. They covered up. And that night, 5 of them people sit there and dismiss that city manager. They did it. And some of you all was here. They had no type of prepping up for Miss Jones. I felt sorry for Miss Jones. I love Miss Jones. But I would tell you one thing about me. If you're a liar, cut me out of the deal. Mrs. Jones lied about it. And they caught her in the lie because one of the employees stepped up and said, yes, we knew about it. They knew about it. They sat there and said, well, Deandra Jameson is just an assistant. She doesn't know nothing about taking water or culturally taking water. But Deandra's just an assistant city manager. Let's call, I'm like Ms. March, a spade. That man is at fault. That man should have been fired immediately. And whoever's in that office, if Mr. Pickney couldn't remember, give him a pink slip. I bet you he remembers that. He will remember he got, and the day and the time he got that pink slip. And you sit here in our face and know that we're suffering. I have a skin disease, and I didn't know what was going on until Charles McCoy said it that night. I was so blown away. I sat back down. I'm like, wow. And they were trying to hush him up. It wasn't the time to hush up Trotter. Let him talk. Any other time he's talking, and you talk, Trotter, talk. That was the night I said, talk, Trotter. I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear what Trotter had to say that night because he opened a whole lot of doors. I'm sorry what happened, Mr. Lawson, but hey, as my granddaughter said, oops, there it is. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Amon, followed by Mary Bram and Cindy March.
Good evening, Amon Israel. The director's job description say the purpose of this is to manage, plan, direct the utilities district to ensure the service and provide and to protect the public health and the environment and comply with regulatory requirements and respond to the needs of the citizens of the city. I had some guests in town a couple of weeks ago, and if y'all please drive down Blue Heron and look at the designated area where the water department is to be placed, why are the banners all falling down? Does that show any respect for the city? It's in our main corridor, and it looks terrible. And we say the best city to live, work, and play. We're talking about a $300 million water plant, and banners cannot be placed on a fence properly. Now, did it take the health department to notify the city on these 13 violations? If we didn't have 17, did it take the health department to do that? If we didn't have the health department, what kind of position would we be in with our water? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, Madam Clerk.
The next speaker is Mary Bram, followed by Cindy March, and then Dolores Williams.
Thank you. Ms. Mary Bram.
Posted in the Palm Beach Post. So take heed, residents, take heed. Miss Mary Bram, Riviera Beach. I'm gonna be kind of short and brief here, but I'm gonna be straight to the point. I've always said that sometimes the people are in the wrong places. If the management, assistant city manager, whoever that may be, are they articulated in where they're supposed to be at? That's where they're supposed to be at. Mr. Spiritus made a comment, and he got some little backlash about it. But see, I call a spade too. When a utility district is very vital as this, and this has been going on before 2015, because see, Ms. Bram here has battled this here. I see Ms. Tina White over here. You remember when we got them other ones out of here? Am I right or wrong, Tina? For the same very thing here. So it's just like we are still putting the cart before the horse. You as a board, when we dismissed Mr. Willie Horton, some of you up on that board had said that we should have someone to talk that language that he talks. There's nothing wrong with Deidre J. There's nothing wrong with Mr. Evans. I need somebody to talk this language here about my utility district here. And it's not saying that none of them cannot rise wherever their occasions are, because they can. But water is life here. And we are constantly regurgitating the same thing over and over and over and over again. I'm tired of fighting this battle here about this water here. When some of you all were elected, you all ran on. We're going to build this utility district. Here's a picture here. We're going to build it. We're going to build it. You said it. You said it. You've done everything else except for put the priorities in place here. Move these people here where they should be at. And I'm not saying I'm not advocating for this or that. I'm saying because, see, I've done these things here. I've done these things here. And everybody that know Miss Bram here, I'm fair. unfair. But when I put you in a position, just like I said, I had to come in, dilate about the police department. Wasn't nothing against nobody. People are always in the wrong places, and this is what happens here. This is what's happened here. You're trying to get blood out of it here. And it's not going to happen until you, as a board here, realize here. Mr. Lowe sat here the beginning of this year when the question was asked, who do you answer to? And he's sitting there still skirting. Who do you answer to?
Thank you for your comments, ma'am.
You all can make these changes here.
Thank
And
you
we
for your
do
comments, Ms. Brown.
expect for you to do that too. Hire somebody for that.
Mr. Chair, I must apologize. I did speak out of order. Next will be Cindy March, Dolores Williams, followed by Doretta Polk, and then Marvelous will be the last speaker.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Cindy.
Good evening, council. This is Cindy March. I've known about this water, even one of the workers let me know he fearful. And I'm not trying to protect Dr. Spiritus, but 3 years ago, if we had to listen to Dr. Spiritus, it wouldn't have been $300 million. But y'all sitting up here want to play politics over the people, the residents. I've been saying it, and I reiterate it over and over again. Someone does have to be held accountable, but we need the job done. I don't know how much y'all paid for that banner at Staples to go over there on Australian on the west side of town. That looked like a disgrace, but you have not built anything. You all have not told us yet how far you all have come with the funding to start building the water plant. Yes, you can hold this man to charge. A spade is a spade, and y'all might not agree with me, but I have my right to my own opinion. Judge ye not. But let me tell you something. When you brought Evans back here, Evans made Deidre the assistant. I feel like this. You have to have some type of experience or engineer. I'm a security guard for a #1 company. We have to document what, when, where, why, and how. And you tell me you got all these employees and they don't know how to do documentations. They don't forgot the date, the time. They should be gone for that reason alone. Forget about the dirty water. You should be gone. You should have never came back. Point blank. Kashama Miller, you and Botel did commercials by It's Clean Water here. Yes, you have your seat, but y'all played a political game. It's not clean water. Stop lying. If you're not going to do nothing else, be true to yourself. Be true to the people that support you and that don't support you. Because everybody have some kind of thing that someone not going to agree. We can agree and disagree, but don't be a liar, period. And see, that's why I advocate and I knock on these people's doors. You all will be surprised how many residents say they have something wrong with their skin. I'm knocking and asking for their vote. But then they vote and put you and the person that ran on clean water. And you know darn well this water not clean. What if it was you with a skin disease? Botel, what if it was you with a skin disease? Y'all hold your head up and you roll your eyes at us like we ignorant. But we got more sense than y'all. The best thing y'all could have did was got a dirty man off the street, clean him up, bathe him up, and put him on a brown suit. But he would have been honest because he would appreciate where he was coming from.
Thank you for your comments.
Dolores
Mr. Chair.
Williams,
Ms.
followed
Miller
by
Anderson, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, my name is Kashamba Miller Anderson. That's #1. #2, I didn't do any commercials running on saying that if we had clear water, there were issues that were needing to be addressed. I hadn't gotten answers for it yet, so I didn't speak on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller Anderson. Ms. Dolores?
Good evening to the council, the mayor, and all these, I started to say, all God people, but you are, because I'm used to saying that in church, but to all the citizens and all of you here, I can voice everything others have gotten up here and said. And I'm going to say one thing, I want to give a compliment. I was at a church and our chief of police, he spoke. I wish everybody could have been there to hear him. He did an excellent job, excellent job. So you're saying nobody could be held accountable or nothing. It should be. You raise your kids and you say, who did it? You know, my kids used to say, I said, who did it? Not me. You know how I stopped that? Not me. That's I'm gonna beat all the not me's. Then they point out the true person. So if it means somebody have to be reprimanded or get the paint slip or whatever, however they say it, we need to do that. So we need to just stop talking about the water, the water, the water. And I want to say this here. If the water is this bad and you know this, and I have to give honor to Mr. Tragic, because he was almost about to get, I ain't gonna say that. Uh, but he brought it out. And Miss Lanier, I am really proud of you. You, I got you, girl. Very proud of you. But I don't hear none of y'all saying about find out all the senior citizens around here, especially the elder ones that can't go out. I don't see, you know who used to do that? Terrence Davis. He used to come around and find the elder people and give them water, see something they need. So I don't hear you saying anything, find these people and bringing them some water. Since the water is still bad, and you say we're going to give the plant. You remember when I first started coming over here, they say they're going to fix these wells. It was $50 million, and the wells are still messed up. And I don't have anything against this director here, but Mr. Logan, it seems as if he got you tied up there that night because you trying to answer Mr. Charger was really asking, you really couldn't answer those questions. Even Miss Anderson asked you stuff and couldn't see that. So what we need you to do, find all these senior citizens and people that need water and get the water plant. If somebody need to be, and they don't know some need to be, there it should be some responsibility. Stop trying to hide it, throwing a rock and hiding your hand. You all living in glass houses, right? We see you, you see me. Let's get this done and do the right thing.
Doretta Paul, followed by Marvelous.
Good evening. My name is Doretta Hawk, and I'm just here to state we have a Palm Beach County administrator. Her name is Mrs. Baker. She's over the entire administration of Palm Beach County. She's doing an excellent, outstanding job, but I don't think she has a degree in each one of her fields that she covers. And I don't think there's a degree that calls for being over the assistant manager of the utility. I don't think you have to have that because she is over the entire Palm Beach County and doing an absolutely wonderful job serving all of us in the county. Now, when I was employed, we learned at Florida A&M University, chain of command. Now, as far as Mr. Pinckney, what he stated, he shut down that well immediately when he knew there was a problem. And I thank him for that. I thank you for your service. Now, chain of command, you all going straight to the top. And what you are doing that I see, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Charger McCoy, Councilman, is going after Mr. Evans and going after Mrs. Deidre Jacobs. Just like Mr. Brown stated, let's correct the situation. Take care of us, regardless who is at fault, because this is horrible. This has been decades of neglect, citizens, decades of neglect. And this is where we are now. But this is not where we have to stay. Absolutely not. So let's stop this witch hunt. Let's continue to start going together and solving this problem. We got to solve the problem. And this is just like Mr. Brown said, this is where we at. This is what has been done. Let's take care of the citizens of Riviera Beach and stop all of this. We are better than this. We are. Mr. Evans has done a remarkable job since this young man came back. We didn't have the police department, the library, fire departments, Senior Island, and all of them were deplorable. Mold, fungi, asbestos. And this is what we're breathing in, and this is what causes a lot of problems. Lung problems,
Thank you for
skin
your
problems,
comments,
and
ma'am.
above.
Thank you for
And
your
I
comments.
thank you,
Ms.
and
Pope,
stop
thank you for your
this.
comments. Thank you.
The last public speaker is Marvelous.
Good evening, Marvelous Washington, Lone Pine Estates. I say this because residents have been talking about the water issue for months now, years. And it's funny that this is a hot button issue tonight when the golf course is on the regular agenda and we packed the house with residents to come and speak up about this golf course. And because we've taken so long, you guys are taking so long on this very issue that you already know the answer to, you already know who's responsible. We've already went through this before because it's like the Twilight Zone. I said in the meeting before, and he sat up here with the same thing he didn't know. And remember that same meeting we were trying to discuss who was going to file the charges against Mr. McCoy because he let the residents know what was going on? It's amazing now that it's such a hot button issue then. It wasn't then, but now it is now. And you're wasting time. And it's hard for me to believe that you really care about getting to the bottom of this because we've already know the health department's already told us. They've already told us what happened. We already know it's $80,000 that we owe, and not to mention, when you vote not to pay it, interest is going to be added to that. You know, you sat up here when the city manager recommended, 3 or 4 bonds. Not one of those bonds said anything about a water plant. And that's why we're so frustrated. Because if you needed the money to build a water plant shovel should have been on the ground by now because that should have been a top priority. Please don't try to make this a priority now because we got an election in about 7 or 8 months. All of a sudden, we're getting all this action. We're getting all these meetings to discuss what? There's no results coming from these meetings, and there's no result coming from this one here. Only result we're getting right now is that the residents of Lone Pine Estates are now leaving because it's 8 o'clock. And we have yet to air any agreements we may have. We have yet to show you all the pictures that's going on in our neighborhood because our infrastructure is failing. We had a sewage leak this week. We didn't receive a notification. My water was off 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. I didn't get a notification. The water pressure fluctuates. I didn't get a notification. There's no communication. So when you talk about public safety and you get up there, and I know everybody cares about it, we do. But when the time to talk about it is when it happened. Right now, it's been 7 or 8 months. We on to the next agenda. And I'm going to close by saying this: the essential duties of the city manager is to maintain the city progress and policy, discuss the problems and complaints concerning city operations with the taxpayers and appropriate people. Don't stop right here. We got to start holding people accountable. Thank you.
Mr. Evans, do you want to comment? Do you want to comment? Residents, if you can, please, we can get back to the meeting.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Evans, any comments?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Spitters?
Mr. Chair, at the last utility meeting, remember we were questioning the $300 million and what the cost would be in increased fees on a $300 million bond issue, and even it might be 500. We don't know what the bottom line is going to be on this plant, but so far our estimates are $300 million. Director Sherman said that at the next meeting he would have the response for us as what the increase cost would be on the fees on a $300 million bond. Do we have that answer tonight?
Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
I don't think we have that particular answer tonight. I know one of the things that we did have the conversation is that we wanted to facilitate a workshop discussion with the board to talk about the water treatment plant, the funding, and the capital stack and the like. So I know that's something that the director was going to look to query the board after we met probably about a week ago with our outside consultants that are facilitating moving that forward. But that is going to be part of the discussion and not retreat, but the workshop that we would like to have with the board concerning the water treatment plant. So we can look to obviously schedule that here in the next couple of weeks.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Well, I'm not really happy with that response. The public deserves to know what the cost of this plant is going to be. We know it's going to be approximately $200 to $300 million, maybe more, because we know that we have to do the wells and we have to do water lines. We know that our sewer plant is probably, our sewer facilities are probably in dire need of rehabilitation, just like the water plant is. But we have to have a good idea. Picking up on what Ms. Washington said, if you remember, we had bond counsel here on the parks, on all the bonds, the $55 million. I went along with the $55 million as long as we didn't have to spend the $55 million. We just authorized bond counsel to go out and get some quotes and come back to us. But we can't make any decision on any bonds or anything else until we resolve the water issue in this city. That's the most important item that we have to be thinking about right now, whether it be budget, bonding, or whatever else. That's got to be number one priority. Everybody has a right to have clean and safe water, and that's got to be our number one priority. I think that we have to have that answer. I'm surprised that we didn't have it tonight. There's been plenty of time between the last utility meeting and this one for us to come up with that number. I expect to have that number in the next few days. Otherwise, how are we supposed to make educated decisions on which direction the city's going to go?
Thank you. Madam Clerk, 7C.
Item 7C, resolution number 01624UD, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the City of Riviera Beach Utility Special District, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving the proposal from Chenmore and Associates, Inc. to perform engineering, design, and permitting services for the rehabilitation, replacement of an essential City of Riviera Beach Utility Special District sanitary lift station, authorizing the Utility Special District Finance Director to make payments from project number 23030 in an amount not to exceed $95,381 and providing an effective date. Mr. Chair, we do have one public comment card for this item. The acceptance of public comment cards is closed.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Made properly seconded. Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if I can have the director of the Utility Special District to make this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Chairman, this is one of what are called canned lift stations. That's an older style of lift station where the electrical systems are underground. We have a $500,000 grant towards the rehabilitation of this station. It requires us to bring in this engineering firm who will do the design work. And with this particular type of work, they will do the design, we will then bid it, and then it will be built. This is one of several grants. We're working our way through them one by one. But we have several lift station grants that we are working on. This is the one that's at the top of the list.
Can we have a public comment card, Madam Clerk?
We have one public comment card on this item. That would be, are you ready for the public comment, Mr. Chair? Mary Bram.
Welcome, Ms. Brown.
I'm gonna be brief again, but straight to the point. I'm gonna say something here because we still on the utility district. Every time we have had Troy Perry over there, that was the fire chief. and he became assistant city manager. He went over to the utility district. We've had Gloria Shadowworth, that was the assistant city manager. She went over there to the utility district. Now we have Miss Deidre Jacob. She's the assistant manager, and she's over at the utility district. We need to take them out of that. Take them out of that. That's the board, because it is a separate board, just like your CRA board. And perhaps they can function and they can rise to where they need to be. Because if we are to move this city forward, and by the way, I do like that marketing so that everybody can see what's been underneath us, above the surface and underneath that surface there. We are more than what people think that we are. But we have to do what we need to do, and that's to put things in its proper place so that we can move these projects, because our city does need to be built up and built out. But it's how each one of us get to where we need to get at. So you have the ball is in your court there. It is. The ball is in your court there. And you said with Mr. Evans, he's not the CRA director because there's more work on the city side to do. You come to realize that. Just like it's more work in other areas and stuff to do. So this is what Ms. Brown and then others are saying. And behind every accountability is transparency. And if you don't have that transparency, you do not have accountability. But I need someone to speak that language of our utility district so we can move it like we're supposed to move it. And then keep all of these attitudes out of this. Because this is a stalemate of some of us in here as it is. Because you got attitudes. And Miss Bram always says she doesn't care because she dialogues with a whole lot of people. I'm wearing previous Ruth Ginsburg here shirt here today because I'm just like her, Mr. McCoy. I'm just like her, Mayor Lawson. Everybody else up there. We got to start doing the truth to the power here and what our city needs here. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that's the end of public comment for this item.
Thank you. Question on the board?
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Spiritus, go ahead.
Mr. Lowe, you said there were a number of pumping stations that are under construction right now?
We have been working through a list of the priority stations. Yes, we're actually at the moment working on lift station 1A, which is the most important station for the whole eastern side of our service area, including the island. We are then moving to one of the stations on the island, lift station number 9. In the meantime, we also have got CBDG grants for 4 lift stations. And the moment we have the new engineering contracts in place, we've already been talking to the county with the people who manage those funds. That will go through a very specific design bid build process due to the fact that the federal funds are involved and all the particular requirements have to be in the contracts. So there's then those 4 lift stations. We have some other can lift stations that we're slowly working towards as well. So we had a separate report to the Wellfield one on the lift stations, which identified a priority list. We've been working through that as we go. We have, in the throes of completely updating the monitoring system for all of our stations. We have got 44 new panels on order. The first 28 have just come in. We're about to start changing out the control panels. We're going to a new cyber-secure method of communication that will also send us far more data back so that we can have a more controlled viewpoint on what's happening out in our system. So there's major upgrades on all the lift stations underway.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
how many lift stations do we have in the city?
52, I believe.
Okay, out of the 52, how many of them are actually in good shape?
I would say that we probably got, we got the 4 can stations that we have to deal with. We got lift station for, I would say we got about 10 to 12 that we need to do more work on. Every station, though, does need the new electrical panels.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
How long have we known about this situation?
With the lift state, the report came in about the same time, about 2 years ago. We had 1.6 million, which the board approved, which we started work on, which we've done the 8 or 9 stations. Lift station number 9 will be the last of that tranche of money. In the meantime, we have gone out and got grant money. We've spent just under $1 million on the control panels. So we've been working our way through. Some people say to me, you can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. We're doing it as fast as we can. We've made some significant change. We did have a large number of lift stations that were on bypass. We're slowly eliminating that. That's the first priority. Get rid of stations that are on bypass. We get the station rehabilitated both above ground and underground when we do it. We only want to go there once.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments from the board? Board Member McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I was curious. I was looking at this agreement for Chinmore, and it seems to reflect that it was renewed in November 2023. Is that your recollection, Mr. Lowe?
I believe so, yes.
Just curious, why is Mr. Bailey's name listed on here as a department director when he doesn't do anything with utilities?
This is because this is a contract that was let that works primarily with the city. The district is in the throes of putting out an RFQ, which should close this week, I believe.
Okay, I'm speaking of the 2023 agreement that was renewed. Down at the signature page, which I kind of got some issues with, he's listed as a department director. Chinmore provides services solely and exclusively to the utility district. The utility district has an engineer, if I'm correct, his name is Michael Lowe, but you're not in that capacity, Stephen Doyle, and then also Mr. John Armstrong. But I don't see those names on here. I see Terrence Bailey.
On the contract itself?
Correct.
That would be the case probably because it originally sat with the city itself. John Armstrong, though, is the engineer who is handling this project.
Right, well, I'm just curious to understand why that's the case, that he executes agreements. In fact, he executed the 2020 agreement, and I'm not sure why. I don't see, and it's very interesting. These agreements, I'm inclined not to support this because I see this agreement from 2020 that's not dated. Seemingly, it represents the period of 2020, but there is no actual physical signature on when it's dated. Then on the, I guess the renewal, ironically, Terrence Bailey is not listed on there. The only person who's listed is Mr. Jonathan Evans. So I'm curious to understand the authority here as to who has the authority to authorize agreements on behalf of the utility district. Because
this agreement was an agreement that was primarily made with the city.
It's not.
Utility district continuing engineering consulting contract expired last year.
Correct. So it automatically just comes over? We don't go out and do our own?
We have a solicitation out as we speak.
Right. Do we automatically just grab over folks that's on the continuing services list for the city, even though they're a separate entity?
We would use it if we have no other alternative.
Right, but seemingly the board And actually, this is a great point. The board has the authority, the sole authority, to enter into agreements on behalf of the district. The city council has the sole authority to enter into agreements on behalf of the city council. So how is it that we interchange? In fact, I got a copy of the utility district charters over here, but it's kind of mentioned in here at least 2 or 3 times where you should not intermingle the two. In the district, the city shall have no authority over the expenses of utility district resources and funds. So I'm not going to support this. This doesn't make sense. We have a utility district resolution, but the agreement is with the city of Riviera Beach. Explain that. That doesn't make sense. In fact, it's not even legally sufficient.
The utility district and preference would have.
Okay, well, Mr. Lowe, I want to speak to legal sufficiency at this point. Thank you. Ms. Nguyen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so resolution 16-24 refers to a resolution between the city of Riviera Beach Utility Special District of Palm Beach County approving a proposal from Chin Moore and Associates. How is it that we're now using an agreement with the city, which they're 2 separate entities in many cases? In fact, in all cases, because unless it's specifically called out in the user services agreement, and even in that sentence, you can't mix the two. If this original continuing services agreement was done for the city of Riviera Beach, you may have some, consultant who would have been able to otherwise apply for or submit a part of the utility continuing services agreement, but could not. But now you're using one from the city, which is, in my opinion, there isn't any crossover.
I agree with you that there should be no crossover. Mr. Lowe, where did you get this authority?
This has been proposed. There are more than once to use this contract. The issue that the district has, we can start work on this. I have no continuing engineering contract. I've been trying to get one for several months. Without it, I have no engineers to support me.
I've reclaimed my time, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, please.
So under that authority, right, if we're looking at the contract, and this is very interesting. Now watch this. What is binding? Is it the contract or is it the resolution? Because the contract is with the city of Riviera Beach and Chin Moore. You're asking the utility district to go and use the contract from a whole another entire entity. It almost would have been better if you were saying you were piggybacking. I mean, that's what you should have said, but technically, this is not legally sufficient. And I think Ms. Nguyen.
I'm sorry, Mr. McCoy, there is the possibility, and I don't have that contract in front of me, that there is an assignment provision. And if there's a mutual assignment between Chin Moore and the utility district to use the city's contract, then it would be acceptable. But if you want us to look into it more and bring it back next Wednesday, we can do that as well. I think. I don't know, Mr. Lowe, if this is an emergency or not.
I don't care. I don't care if it's an emergency. I really don't give a darn. You know why? That's why I don't do a gender review, because it's a complete waste of time. And as long as we have been on this hiatus, this should have been figured out. We haven't met in over a month and a half. And quite frankly, you want the city utility district to authorize a resolution on a contract that the city of Riviera Beach has. It's not legally sufficient. I would offer up an amendment that we disapprove.
Mr. Chair.
Mayor?
Mr. Lowe, why won't you hire an engineer? I heard you say you've been trying for months. What's the issue?
There's 2 different separate issues. There's the consulting engineers that would do the design work, and then there's the engineers that we would have that would help manage the projects and oversee other problems that we have in the system. 2 separate issues.
Going back to your words, I've been trying for months. What's stopping you?
In terms of interviewing for engineers, we're doing a series of interviews over the next 2 weeks. We are in the process of doing that.
When did you start that?
We started putting in stuff about 4 to 6 weeks ago.
But you've been months behind.
Months behind because of the availability of candidates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Additional comments from the board? Board Member McCoy offered up an amendment.
Well, even if you don't accept the amendment, Ms. Nguyen has already kind of notioned that you can't do it. So, I mean, this is clearly a agreement with the city, and I've not seen any reference to the utility special district in neither of the 31 pages. And that would explain why Mr. Bailey's name is listed on the 2020 version and the 2023 version. So I just move that we dispose of it so staff can come back. We don't even have to, we can just drop it. We don't need to do anything with it.
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Spiritus?
Okay, I believe that this is an emergency situation. We must have the lift stations working properly in order for the system to work properly. I think that it ought to be postponed and brought back at the next meeting after council reviews it and gives us an opinion. So I make a motion that we postpone this agenda item until the next utility meeting after we receive council opinion and vote on it at the next meeting.
Second.
Amendment has been made, properly seconded. Additional questions from the board? Madam Clerk?
Board Member McCoy, Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Spiritus, Vice Chair Lanier,
Yes.
Chair Lawson,
Yes.
unanimous vote.
Thank you. Discussion? Oh, no. Those amendments to the motion. Discussion, deliberation?
Sure.
Discussion, City Manager?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Executive Director?
Mr. Chairman, recognizing the time, I was going to make a brief presentation which just showed some slides of the work that had been
Residents, if we can, residents, please. Go ahead, Director.
What I was going to suggest is that we do not do that because of the time constraint.
Okay, thank you.
What we will do is we will try and get those pictures up on the project website so people can see.
Thank you, Director Lowe. District Attorney?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Statements from the board, starting with Board Member Lanier.
No.
Board Member Spiritus?
I'm looking forward to resolving the issue as everyone brought up tonight. The most important issue is getting a new water plant, getting new wells, and getting our lift stations in action.
Thank you. Board Member Miller Anderson? Board Member McCoy?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Members, I wanted to bring some clarity to what was stated earlier about the authority that we have. I think no one up here disagrees that we are not permitted to terminate employees, but I did send over to Ms. Nguyen moments ago a copy of the Resolution 32-19 and also the Utility Special District Charter, which in pertinent parts provides Section 5.01 of the Utility District's Charter says delegation of duty. Nothing contained herein shall be deemed to authorize the unauthorized delegation of any of the constitutional or statutory duties of the state or the city or any officers thereof. We are officers of the utility district. We have the sole authority of deciding the oversight and operations of the utility district. In 2019, by Resolution 32-19, this board, 4-1 vote, decided to put the executive director position under the supervision of the city manager. We have no authority to fire the city manager, but we certainly have the authority to decide who runs the day-to-day operations of our utility district. So with that being said, I will certainly offer up the opportunity for us to remove Mr. Michael Lowe from the utility district director's position. That's my motion, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion's been made And properly seconded. Discussion from my board. Comments and discussion, please. If we remove Director Lowe, Board Member McCoy, do we have a recommendation of who will fill that position, or are we going to look to go out for the job?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, two things that I was thinking. Number one is I'm not, and certainly want to make sure that this is clear. This is not the position that we're terminating him. Perhaps he is, he's an employee of the manager. And, that's a determination with city manager and city administration. However, I would certainly like to move forward with either the assistant director or, the assistant director would be my recommendation on an interim basis.
Okay. Do we want to take public comments? Public comment cards are open for public if they'd like to submit on this item. Additional comments from my board?
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Spears, go ahead.
right now, we're at a very difficult situation and position in designing the new water plant. I don't know if it makes sense to change horses in the middle of the race right now, especially when we don't have someone to really fill the position at this time. I just think that we have to work very, very hard to find someone who is going to go into that position before you eliminate someone that's in charge right now. I don't know, Mr. Lowe, you think your assistant director can handle negotiating? Well, we're throwing someone out in the middle of a $16 million design project. What happens? Are we going to be at a standstill right now and put the water plant off for another 2 years? Or are we going to keep moving right now and try and get this water plant done as fast as we can? Because this will stop the process of the design work without any question.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Board Member McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board Member Spears, that's a great point. And I certainly am conscientious and certainly considerate of that. However, we've been an entire year without any accountability. So if you're going to sit here and suggest to me that we should trust without verifying, and we've seen 13 months of that, I mean, how do I have confidence? I mean, it's very tough for me to explain the current situation with the water. We've been put on notice with 768 notices. We've already received one complaint. When I mean complaint in terms of legal action, that has already been served upon the city. I would consider that this is no different than when he was out of the country the last time. I would have the expectation that somebody is at the helm, but nothing about any role up here, us included. The world is going to keep on turning, and I would hope that we have competent staff to do it. But certainly, Mr. Lowe has not proven enough competence to even give us a thorough explanation as to what the internal breakdowns and failures. So certainly, unless you know something in the time that you've been here, I've not seen where anybody has even explained to me where the process has failed. And to sit here and suggest that I'm going to use hope as my strategy or hope as what I'm holding on to going forward, I don't have it. We are only here for a certain amount of time. Certainly, if we're engaging consultants, I just would like someone that's going to be more open and transparent with us. And, I think one of the members of the public said it. We were here literally sitting in the audience when this seems like deja vu. It's like, at what point does somebody be able to stand up and tell us what's going on? And this happened with, and I don't want to repeat the previous director's name, but, this is, at what point do we say we need to make sure that somebody's going to be able to, at the minimum, give us the information that gives us some reassurances? And I'm not sure I'm there with our current administration.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may make a statement or a point
Please,
based upon some. Well, firstly, Let me say I came out of retirement because you needed somebody that could work on this plant for you, and I have that experience. I'm happy to go back in retirement. This utility is in a total mess. I came in to try and help you. All you have done since I've been here is made it hard to do the job. And this will continue whether I'm in the position or anybody else. I recognize that the statement I'm making now suggests that you're just going to vote me out of office. That's fine. I've got plenty of life to get on with. The issue is you need a water plant. You are not going to get a water plant if you continue to carry on the way you are doing it. The issues within the district are way beyond just wanting a water plant. I came through the front door, took the job after a lot of people persuaded me to do it, even though I was in retirement, recognizing the problems that you had. I come through the front door, the first report I get says I need to spend $45 million on my lift stations. The second report says I need to spend $27 million on the well field. In the meantime, I discover that no work has been done with regards to I&I, that's inflow and infiltration. No work has been done on dealing with the problems with the mains, 70% of which are asbestos cement and very brittle and are a problem.
So,
I would
Director,
suggest to you.
I do apologize, but before you go on, Director Lowe, and with those, and also understanding, Director Lowe, this is what we were looking for.
Exactly.
So here's our
Thank
question.
you.
Director
Thank
Lowe,
you.
where was this passion when you gave this oversight? Excuse me, residents, please. Where was this same passion when you gave that report? Where was this same passion for the last year that we've waited for? We do want it now, but now that there's a fire being lit, this is when we jump out and hear this from our board, from our city manager, from our executive director. No, Director Lowe, this is what we wanted to hear a year ago. When this was brought to us 6 months after the issue, this is the same passion and concern we wanted, because now we're hearing it tonight because one of my colleagues made a motion. Director Lowe, this is not what we need tonight. Tonight, we want a full report and detail. So if you're going to give us all the information, please, we'll sit and listen for the rest of the night. We will hear everything. We want to know it all. But to that point, we're going to stay here all night, residents, because we are going to hear about Lone Pine. We're going to talk about all the issues. But if we want to hear about these issues, Director Lowe, all this passion that you're giving to us now is what we've been asking for and what the residents needed to hear. And we continue to sit up here and take accountability for what our staff is doing. So residents, unfortunately, we're hearing this for the first time because there's a passion being lit under Director Lowe who wants to go back to retirement. And that's okay. But to that point, we asked him to come out of retirement to help this city. But now we cannot hide behind the issues that there's certain things not being clearly stated to the public. And whether it's coming from anyone in this office, we need to be all on the same page. So we want this transparency. So we do have some public comment cards, but I'll let my colleagues finish. Do we have one? I'll let my colleagues finish. Board Member McCoy and Mayor Felder.
I'll defer to Mayor Felder, but you took the words out of my mouth. Like literally, I mean, how long does it take for us to find out who made a failure? But seemingly, I asked, what did you need? Do you need more resources? Please explain to me how we're making it hard. There's not been any item that you brought to this board that has some sort of legal and justifiable and meaningful purpose for the operations of this utility district that we didn't support. In fact, I made a proclamation when I got here that there was nothing that I was going to do that was going to slow down anything concerning the water operations to the extent that it's legal and it's proper. You can't bring me something half-baked with the agreement from the city of Riviera Beach for the utility district and expect me to do it. And then because it's an emergency, then we're supposed to break our own law. I mean, the law applies to everybody, Mr. Lowe. So certainly if you know something that we haven't supported you on, I'm open for it. But I can't tell you that I recall anything that was been properly put before this board that we chose not to support. And even still, I had to hold my nose and vote for that 30%. And that was after the 2020 lawsuit that I filed against the city because you guys did it improper. So please tell me what exactly are you looking for from the board? And I asked this question earlier, what is it that you need? Because saying and having, such spirited response today really, to me, just seems like you're trying to find, some sort of reason to deflect. But help me understand, because our board, we're charged with oversight. No different than what I've just seen on the news. The Secretary of Secret Service says the buck stops with me. So how do I now be able to say the buck stops with the board, but we don't have any operational control, but we trust that our executive director is going to give us information? We heard more in the 1 minute and 15 seconds about the real need and passion from you than we've ever heard. So please, I'm open. I'm listening.
Mr. Chair,
Mayor,
let
please.
me say this first. And Councilman McCoy, you're right. I don't think it's a board issue. I think it's a culture issue. This is one of the most loyal men, because when I ask him a question, he looks over here. To his detriment of trying to keep everybody else safe, he was willing to take the blame. It ain't a board problem. It ain't a board problem he's facing. When he says stuff like, they didn't, and he says stuff like, I can't, he has to have permission to run his dang on department. Now let's if we chase that rabbit, and so his passion is, this man was called back to do one thing, right? He can go back to do whatever he wants to. This is the passion we need to hear. But man, when you being beat down and when you can't run your department, it's easy to sit up here and say how it should be. We need to be talking to other people. And he needs to be honest about what he's really facing, so this board would know and understand how that department is being ran.
Now, to that point, before we do go into public comment, I don't want residents to feel or to pass a narrative that Director Lowe is being cut off. So please, Director Lowe, I want you to go ahead and finish your comments that you had. We'll then go into public comments, and then we will move forward with the motion. Go ahead, Director Lowe.
It's very difficult to know where to start. I mean, yes, I'm showing passion now. It's because I believe I'm not one that wants to throw anybody else under the bus. I'm somebody who wants to try and find a way forward so that we can do the things that we do. As an example, I recognize that the contract that we have with Chen Moore, although we had a separate one, is currently held by the city. My issue is I have no continuing engineering contract. I have been trying to get one since last year. It is finally out on the street, and hopefully we will be able to do it. But as a director of a utility, I know that I need the support of these engineers, because we don't have all of the skills. We know a lot about it, but we don't have the time either. We don't have the people to design lift stations. We know how they should be designed. We are involved with the process. But to put all of those drawings together, etc., to put together the big packages, we would need a way bigger staff. The reality is that, and we have been trying, as the mayor knows, to hire more engineers. We need more engineers so that we can manage these projects. The board are very keen that we get grants. I would say that my senior engineer is probably 80% bogged down with handling grants. I see day after day emails going backwards and forwards with the various agencies.
Mr. Chair, could you repeat that? Your engineer is doing what?
He's dealing with grant issues associated with our projects. We have, for instance, a grant of $1.9 million to work on the force main, that's the pressurized wastewater line that goes from us over to the East Central Regional Wastewater Plant. In one spot, it goes over the top of the M Canal. The M Canal supplies drinking water to West Palm Beach. Not surprisingly, they're quite interested in us going under rather than over. Also, we have a line that goes over the C-17 canal, and in fact, we have issues with the line there 2 years ago. That grant we have had now for at least 3 years, and we have been wading through the issues in getting that grant. I'm fully supportive of grant, but by the time we actually run that project, the grant will be meaningless because the cost increase will have eaten up the value of the grant. We have grants to put generators into lift stations. We've been working through, they were awarded before I got here. We're still working with FEMA on those grants. We are so tied down in trying to move some of these things forward. I mean, I'm acting as your controls engineer. We don't have anybody, even when we had engineering support, who looked at what's called systems integration. We have used through our previous engineering contracts, we've gone through some companies so we can start this design work. But you know, you've got a lift station system that is woefully out of date. Most of the panels we can't even get the parts for. But you've got to go through the steps one by one to replace them correctly. You can't just take someone else's system. You have to determine how it is you're going to run your control system, what systems you're going to use, how you're going to structure it, how you're going to communicate between the remote sites and the central location, how are you going to communicate alarms out to your employees so that they can work on it. So it's a very involved process.
Chair.
And so you take all of these various tasks that we're trying to work through to get us where we need to be. Now, I did
Chair.
send an organization.
Excuse me, Director Lowe. Board Member Lanier?
Listen, listen. We have a motion on the floor, first of all. Second of all, we have another meeting here, and we've heard this before. Now we want to get into more information about the passion. We have a motion on the floor. We need to dispose of that. If you want to go back, that's fine. But we need to, this is basically an interview about what you think you should have done. There's a motion on the floor, and I want to call the question.
Could I suggest one thing, please, Mr. Chairman? If the alternative is you wish to have my assistant director, maybe you should have his opinion.
Public comment, please.
We have one public comment card. Tina White.
Good evening, Tina White, homestead taxpayer and utility water customer. I returned in 2004, and we've had 3 utility directors, and all of them, despite the taxpayers paying them very well for their services, make us feel that they're doing us a favor. And I'm very opposed to people coming out of retirement to do us a favor anyway. And so I have no confidence in the utility director. The utility director, in my opinion, has been nothing but arrogant. He has not answered and been forthcoming with any of the questions of the board. We have not received any forthright answers about the water, the fecal matter in the water. I don't care what he says are the problems. The problems were here when he came. The problem's going to be here when he's gone. I think that we need to relieve him of the duties, let him go back into retirement, because we shouldn't be beholden to someone that we're paying to do a job. And it's bad business to begin with to bring someone out of retirement. Let them stay in retirement. Let's get someone that's got vigor, the stamina, and want to do the job and have innovation. If you have a problem where you're bogged down with 80% grant requirements, why not go out and get someone to manage grants? There are companies that do nothing but manage grants. So in my opinion, the director has no leadership capabilities at this point. I have no confidence in him. We have not received one solid answer about the fecal matter in our water. That's unacceptable. And I don't care what any council person say up there, these projects cannot override that we have never been given any right information about the fecal matter in our water. That cannot be erased. We cannot pretend like we're just going to go forward. You can't go forward if you don't know the history behind the incompetency that started the process. So I'm in 1,000% of the board relieving him of his duties tonight. I don't think that we should have anybody that make us feel that they're doing us a favor by coming to work when the taxpayers are paying them. So I vote and I support the board to relieve him of his duties. I think that we are not going to be any further behind the ball than we already are while we get another person in that position. If the assistant director does not want the job, that's fine too. But we have consultants that we could bring in from U.S. Water or anywhere else that we've been paying to run the utility district until we have a director in place that want to be here and want to be at work and have leadership. So if you bog down with something like grant writing, that's a bad amount of time that your engineer is spending on grants. That's not the job he came here for. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Comments from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Spears, go ahead.
Mr. Evans, at one of the meetings, I might have been the last meeting, utility meeting, you said you were speaking with Seacoast with the ability to take over our system.
Mr. Chair, if I may. We've never had conversations with regards to Seacoast taking over our systems. We've had conversations internally about the cost if we were to buy water wholesale from Seacoast to be able to, once we get into that workshop discussion with the board, so we can provide you an apples to apple comparison should you continue to proceed forward with the design and construction of a new water treatment plant.
So they would fill the gap in between while the plant is being built? Is that what you're speaking about?
Mr. Chair, if I may? But it would be another option that you all can invariably consider, an option whereby our wells would still be utilized for the purposes of the water treatment plant. They would do some of the processing, and then we'll be a wholesale distributor. And so staff is going through the exercise to effectively be able to validate or eliminate options as you go through the budgetary process. But from the preliminary discussions and all accounts that we've had in conversations with staff, that's going to be a more expensive option, but we are going through that exercise to validate or invalidate and share the findings with the board.
I just wanted to say again, there's a motion on the floor, and we can dispose of that motion. I don't know who this is up to the podium, but we've had public comment, so that's neither here nor there. There's a motion on the floor, and we should move forward.
This is our assistant director, ma'am.
Chairman. See, I didn't even know who
to that
it
point,
was.
to that point,
That says
we're not looking for additional comments yet, Mr. Doyle. If you could.
I'll be very short, by the way.
But let me finish with the board. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Board member, go ahead.
I would certainly entertain Mr. Doyle, and I would ask the board to, if it's to the extent that he is going to be accepting the interim role, or I guess the manager would be bringing forth some sort of recommendation to the interim role. But outside of that, I mean, I don't know what else he could offer, or that he's declining it. I don't know.
Well, I guess that's part of my unreadiness with relieving Mr. Doyle of the director position. I'm sorry, Mr. Lowe. What is our next step? Because I know my colleague did recommend the assistant director, so I'm not sure what our next step would be as a board to bring in somebody to oversee the UD. Mr. Doyle, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. So I've been practicing for 40 years. I am a professional engineer. Actually, Spirit is, by the way, I did all the town of Hempstead work back 30, 40 years ago. Okay, so I'm licensed in multiple states. So I've been practicing for 40 years. I think this man has been practicing for more than 40 years. That's 80 years together, right? I'm telling you right now, the two of us together cannot even meet the demands of this utility right now. We're drowning, plain and simple. There's not one person that could handle this utility right now. I say it all the time. He used one of my quotes, by the way. The elephant, one bite at a time. We're taking 2 bites, and it's not enough. Okay, I have more 911s on a daily basis than the fire department. So, and let's blame the last guy that was in here lying. And by the way, I could walk out with Mr. Lowe too. This has nothing to do with that. It's just basically, this is straight engineering, okay? There's a lot of things that are broken here. We're doing the best we can on a daily basis to make it work. And it's everyday challenging. I've used up every single resource I've had on a daily basis. And by the way, and I'm not a public speaker. I'm just getting to the point where I'm here, and you have to look at back in time. 40 years ago, 1958, it stated. 1958.
Chair.
It should have been touched for so long. It should have been touched every 10
Chair.
years.
Thank you, Mr.
It's just
Doyle.
a challenging. So
Thank you, Mr. Doyle.
I apologize.
Thank
but
you.
I'm just
Board-
telling you that it's a lot of work for one individual to do. So, sorry, people.
Yeah.
Board Member Lanier?
First of all, someone threatening us that they'll leave too is very disrespectful. Now, listen, this is serious business here with this water. And I don't want people thinking that we owe them something. You get paid for your job. That is what you do. So don't play the victim now. We've been asking for a year about this. And now tonight, you want to come up to the podium? You want to play the victim? No, we've been asking for this. And I think y'all, you have to remember this. We have been asking for this. It was in the news constantly. We got nothing. I sent you an email, Mr. Lowe, and you were so disrespectful and so arrogant and nonchalant about it that I knew then it was just something that you felt like, hey, whatever. So no, there's a motion on the floor. I think we should proceed with it.
Respect, your attitude to me was disrespectful. You don't want to hear it, do you?
Mr.
Chair.
Lowe?
Chair.
That's my last comment.
If we,
Chair.
thank you,
There's
Director
no
Lowe.
point.
Thank you.
See you later.
Okay,
No person, they just told you, no person, no two people.
residents,
We need a-
as soon as we get started
need
with
a
our city
large
council meeting, we're gonna go
organization to
immediately
run
into
this.
public comments. Board, there's a motion on the table, and it's been seconded. No additional discussion. Madam Clerk?
Board Member Spiritus,
Yes.
Board Member McCoy,
Yes.
Board Member Miller Anderson, Vice Chair Lanier,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
The motion passes with Board Member Miller Anderson out.
Additional comments, Board Member McCoy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Evans, can we get something? I know this is like something that just occurred, but certainly if you can work on how we're going to have a succession plan or who comes up next.
Mr. Chair and members of the board,
Mr. Evans?
I can certainly facilitate and at least have the work on the job description and the advertisements, and have that. The board is convening on the 24th, so I can have that ready to present. But one of the things I think that the board should effectively do is a situation where the appointment of the interim, by effectively putting a motion and voting on who would serve in that particular interim role for the utility district.
Board Member McCoy?
So I just want to clarify for the members, and Mr. Evans, I certainly, I want you to, correct me if I'm wrong, but the utility district director or any employee of the city is not an employee of the utility district, but an employee of the city. But certainly, through my exchange with the attorney, operationally, we can determine who runs the day-to-day. So if you find some other role for him somewhere else, then certainly that's your prerogative and what you do. But as far as the operations, I think I've heard it today. I've never seen that much conversation come from the executive director. And I asked twice, what is it that you expect from us that you've asked us for that we haven't delivered? But I can't get beat up inside the gym or the grocery store about having fecal water in our system, and I can't even give an explanation. And it's been a whole year. So perhaps maybe it may get expedited at this point because I don't know what the holdup was. But certainly, Ms. Evans, you have obviously, I think inherently your marching orders to figure out what our continuation here is. But you know, I respect his experience, but we have to figure out and move on what's best for the organization.
Mr. Chair?
One moment, Dr. Spiritus. Mayor, comments? No. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Spiritus.
Mr. Evans, I would really urge you to look at the possibility of bringing in an engineering firm to run the operations on a daily basis or to oversee the operations on a daily basis. As our two engineers said, and I've worked in a lot of water plants and in this industry over the years, no matter who you get, you're going to have the same situation. You are in an emergency, dire, straight situation here in the city. No two engineers are going to be able to come in here and change that. You need a whole team to come in here and operate this plant and get the new plant done. And I think you ought to start looking in that avenue.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll certainly, I'll start working on this matter, obviously later on this evening or early this morning or tomorrow morning, and then report to the board accordingly.
Thank you. Residents, we will be starting our city council meeting in the next 5 minutes. We will reconvene. So we will be back if no further business. This meeting is adjourned.